Aloha mai kako. The Aloha chant was written by Pilahi Paki, and in it she shares qualities of aloha, qualities like kindness, of unity, of thoughtfulness, of humility and patience. And she shares this as a gift to the world from Hawaii. Aka haena Hawaii, lo kahia kulike, olu olu kamana o, ha'a ko kulana, ahonuia lana kila. Aloha mai na Hawaii, o ke aloha no kamea nui. E o mai na Hawaii, na puana leina mamo. Ala mai kalahui, laula kaulana. O mai kalehulehu, ha'aheo oe Hawaii. Anua no ke aloha. Aloha e, aloha e, aloha e. Aloha mai kako.
Thank you, Malia. Kumu Malia. Aloha and welcome from Honolulu, Hawaii, and to this International Day of Nonviolence and Mahatma Gandhi Day celebration. Today, we are honored to include a host of international panelists. Please feel free to refer to our program and join the webinar for the events that speak to you, or settle in for the entire event as we travel across the world with our esteemed guest speakers and performers. Initiated by Honolulu's Gandhi International Institute for Peace and hosted by Still and Moving Center, this webinar is offered to the worldwide community as a gift to connect and inspire. As we celebrate the man and reflect on his words, we take the opportunity to assess our current realities as well as cast forward and project his wisdom into the future. Our first speaker, Dr. Raj Kumar, is the founder and president of the Gandhi International Institute for Peace in Hawaii. He laid the foundations of the Gandhi Institute on September 11, 2001. Since 2007, GIIP has led an annual International Day of Nonviolence in Hawaii and to promote peace and nonviolence in the community. In 2015, the Institute initiated a bill in the Hawaii legislature to establish October 2nd as Mahatma Gandhi Day. It was signed into effect by the Honorable David Ige, our governor, and making Hawaii the first state in the U.S. to declare October 2nd as Mahatma Gandhi Day. On a personal front, Dr. Kumar has authored numerous books. He plans to release his latest work on Mahatma Gandhi titled Anger and Nonviolence in 2021. In our event today, Raj will be preceded by a singer, Yash Nagpaul, performing the devotional chant, Raghupati Raghav Raja Nam Ram, Patit Pitpavan Sita Ram. Mr. Nagpaul performed this very chant at the unveiling ceremony of the Waikiki statue of Mahatma Gandhi in 1990, which was organized by the former mayor of Honolulu, Frank Fossey, and the Watermo family. This chant was one of Mahatma Gandhi's favorite devotional songs, known to enlighten our life. It translates as, Lord Ram, chief of the house of Raghav dynasty, uplifter of those who have fallen, O divine couple, Sita and Ram, beloved Sita and Ram, God and Allah is your name, meaning that the Supreme Lord can be called by many names. Lord bless everyone with wisdom. After the devotional chant, Raj will launch the event by celebrating Gandhi's legacy in the modern world.
रघुपति राघव राजा राम पतित पावन सीताराम। रघुपति राघव राजा राम पतित पावन सीताराम। सीताराम सीताराम भज प्यारे मन सीताराम। सीताराम सीताराम भज मन प्यारे सीताराम। रघुपति राघव राजा राम पतित पावन सीताराम। ईश्वर अल्लाह तेरो नाम सबको सन्मति दे भगवान। ईश्वर अल्लाह तेरो नाम सबको सन्मति दे भगवान। रघुपति राघव राजा राम पतित पावन सीताराम। रघुपति राघव राजा राम पतित पावन सीताराम। मुख में तुलसी घट में राम जब बोलो तब सीताराम। मुख में तुलसी घट में राम जब बोलो तब सीताराम। रघुपति राघव राजा राम पतित पावन सीताराम। रघुपति राघव राजा राम पतित पावन सीताराम। सीताराम सीताराम भज मन प्यारे सीताराम। रघुपति राघव राजा राम पतित पावन सीताराम।
Aloha and namaste, viewers from India, UK, Canada, Mexico, USA, and from all over the world. On behalf of Gandhi International Institute for Peace, GIIP, I would like to welcome you all to our 15th annual event to commemorate the 151st birthday of one of the greatest leaders in the world history, Mahatma Gandhi, and to celebrate International Day of Nonviolence and to raise awareness about nonviolence and peace. I want to thank Hawaii Governor Honorable David Ige and Honolulu Mayor Kirk Caldwell for sending proclamations for today's event. I also want to thank US Senator Brian Schatz, US Congressman Ed Case, US Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard for sending special messages from Washington for the event. Here from Hawaii, Senator President Ron Kochi, Senator Brian Taniguchi and Mike Gabbard, House Speaker Scott Saiki, House Representative Scott Nishimoto, to send us certificates honoring and commending GIIP for its efforts to serve Hawaii by championing the cause of nonviolence and reminding Hawaii and the word of the true Aloha Spirit. Let me start by giving a brief history about how GIIP was established. My journey with Peace Institute started on September 11, 2001, when terrorists attacked the Twin Towers in New York. I was stunned and saddened by what I witnessed in the news. In response, I organized an interfaith peace service at Pakihale in Waikiki on the next day, September 12, 2001. Let me highlight some of the achievement of GIIP since its inception. GIIP organized a World Peace Walk from Ala Moana Beach Park to Kapilani Park in Waikiki on October 2, 2007, when the resolution was passed by the United Nations and they declared October 2 as International Day of Nonviolence. Over 22 organizations participated in this peace walk. GIIP hosts Gandhi Day celebration on October 2nd in Honolulu each year. It is a free event attended by locals and tourists. GIIP introduced Senate Bill SB 332 in the Hawaii Senate through Senator Brian Taniguchi and former Senator Susan Chan Oakland to proclaim October 2 as Mahatma Gandhi Day in Hawaii. The bill was unanimously passed by the Senate and House in March 2015 and signed into Act 5 by Honorable Governor David Ige on April 9, 2015, making Hawaii the first state in the nation to proclaim October 2 as Mahatma Gandhi Day. GIIP has built relationships with various organizations and universities in Hawaii and elsewhere to spread the message of nonviolence and promote world peace. Many prominent people have praised Gandhi. Pacifist Romain Rolland, 1915 Nobel Prize winner in the literature, called him another Jesus. Dr. Albert Einstein said, generations to come, it may well be, will scarce believe that such a man as this one, ever in flesh and blood, walked upon this earth. Indeed, even today, very few of us know about Gandhi. Let me say a few words for those who do not know about Gandhi and the relevance of his teaching in the present time. Mahatma Gandhi was inspired by the teachings of Hinduism, Jainism, and Buddhism. He practiced and preached ahimsa, which means nonviolence, which also means do not harm others in your thoughts, words, and actions. To the Western world, Gandhi was a freedom fighter who was fighting non-violently against the British to give India independence. For the poor people of India, he was Mahatma, a title given by the poor people to him that means great soul. Gandhi is known in India as the father of the nation. People were surprised by his simple way of living in villages, in spite of being born in a very wealthy family and being educated. He believed it was important for the people of India to be educated, which included learning a craft and developing local small-scale industries so they could become self-reliant. Gandhi once said, "The world has enough for everyone's need, but not for everyone's greed," which truly highlights the very basic problem the world has been facing through centuries. This greed and competition to dominate the world have been the most important causes for ongoing wars and conflicts. According to Gandhi, violence is the sin. Gandhi believed that every religion teaches us the same thing, which is to serve humanity selflessly. He believed we all are equal before God, and humanity is our only religion. He encouraged everyone to love one another in spite of the differences between us. He emphasized principles of truth, satyagraha, nonviolence, and peace. Gandhi's philosophy is so genuine and inspirational that it was followed by some of the most prominent people in the world, including Nelson Mandela, who was inspired by Gandhi to lead a nonviolent resistance movement in South Africa against apartheid. Martin Luther King Jr. and President Barack Obama, who was so motivated by Gandhi that his portrait hung in Obama's Senate office, were great admirers of Gandhi. When founder of Apple, Steve Jobs went to India in the early 70s, he read a lot about Mahatma Gandhi and his philosophy and spirituality. This transformed his life to think different. Indeed, Gandhi's quote, "Be the change you wish to see in the world," truly reflects the core principles in Steve Jobs' life and in the vision of Apple. Presently, the world is going through a major turmoil and is being threatened by coronavirus, global terrorism, and war. We also see a lot of violence in the street, mass shootings in schools and religious places, and sexual assaults on women and children. It is very important that today's youth follow the Gandhian philosophy. Gandhian philosophy is the need of the hour for the survival of humanity. All Mahatma Gandhi's quotes are relevant, but I would like to reiterate a few of his best quotes. The best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. You must be the change you wish to see in the world, and when we change, the world changes. Happiness is when what you think, what you say, and what you do are in harmony. Today, we are celebrating Gandhi's great legacy that he left for us and our future generations to follow. He became immortal due to his great deeds and selfless service for mankind. As rightly said by Gandhi, "My life is my message." In closing, I would like to recite a small prayer for peace. Peace is our birthright. We should never give up hope for peace, even it appears to be impossible. Peace is divine and eternal. This is a chant from Yajurveda. Om, there may be peace in the sky and in space. May there be peace on the land and in the waters. May herbs and food bring us peace. May all personifications of God bring us peace. May God bring us peace. May there be peace throughout the world. May the peace be peaceful. May God give me so much peace. Om. May there be peace at the physical, mental, and spiritual level. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti Om. May peace prevail on earth. Mahalo and thank you.
Mahalo and thank you, Raj. Before we move on, please allow me to introduce myself as I hadn't. My name is Willow Chang. I'm going to be your MC today. I wear a couple of hats. I'll be your MC. I teach here at the Still and Moving Center, and I'm also a member of the Gandhi International Institute for Peace. It is a great honor to be involved with you in this capacity. I am grateful to our staff and team who worked very tirelessly behind the scenes to make this happen. And I'm so happy that we're able to gather together in this way. Despite the unusual circumstances, it's a blessing that so many people from many parts of the world can join and share with us in this collective vision of peace and harmony and bridging greater understanding. We have a host of international speakers and performers today. They all answered the call to speak on various aspects of Gandhi's legacy. One of our guests, however, could not make it today and requested that we relay his words on his behalf. This is a message from Gurudev Sri Sri Ravi Shankar. At a time when there is aggression and polarization between nations, Mahatma Gandhi's values of nonviolence and compassion became even more significant. He made a great impact on the collective mindset of not just the people of India, but the whole world by advocating a spiritual outlook, with a sense of sacrifice for the greater good at its center. At the same time, he urged people into action by taking up social responsibility and even expressing dissent and resistance non-violently when required. The call for spiritual values at one's heart, along with the pertinent social action, united millions of people at a time when there was no social media. Gandhiji's message is so timeless and universal that it continues to influence far-off corners of the world. When I spoke to the FARC, rebel group in Colombia a few years ago, they announced a unilateral ceasefire and adopted a Gandhian principle in ending the violent conflict that had been going on for over 5 decades in the country. We need to educate our youth about Gandhian values and lay the foundation for them for a peaceful yet strong character. It is nice to know that the state of Hawaii has recognized this need and celebrates Mahatma Gandhi Day each year. I congratulate the organizers of this webinar. Before we move to our next guest, I would like to say in advance that I humbly ask for your patience because there are many names that are sometimes challenging and new and unfamiliar. If I mispronounce them, please know it was not done with any intention of wrongdoing. Now, please help me welcome Sooriya Kumar and Zeny Ogrisseg from Oahu. Born in Sri Lanka and a 35-year resident of Waianae, Hawaii, Sooriya achieved prominence as a world-renowned copper artist, creating artwork that graces the entrances and walls of healing centers, temples, homes, and community buildings around the world. An international peace advocate, he has walked with holy men throughout India, Sri Lanka, and the Himalayas of Nepal, and has made 8 round trips overland from Sri Lanka to Persia to Europe, experiencing people from different cultures, religions, and regions. Sooriya's life journey has been on a pilgrimage uniting the path of the healer and traditional visual arts with the spiritual path of the heart. According to Sooriya, quote, "Art created with heart speaks to other hearts. Through this language of the heart, union is achieved." And our other artist, Zeny Ogrisseg, is a yoga educator, musician, sound healer, and a Sri Vidya practitioner. With a mixed heritage that includes Punjabi Indian, Filipino, and Spanish, Zeny was raised in a culturally and spiritually diverse home. She has traveled extensively all over India, studying yoga, tantra, mantra, and Ayurveda. Her own daily practice involves meditating and chanting daily, studying the source text of yoga, practicing Sri Vidya, and teaching yoga classes. With a passion for sacred music, Zeny plays the piano, harp, harmonium, and Tibetan singing bowls, but her main instrument is her voice. Zeny is a regular yoga and mantra teacher here at the Still and Living Center. Today, Sooriya Kumar will speak on his experience as a young man and lead us on with a prayer to Gandhi. And Zeny will perform one of Gandhi's favorite mantras, Vaishnava Janato, that embodies his philosophy of non-harming and what it means to be a true devotee of God.
First, I'm very honored to say again, very humbly, I stand in front of you all. I bow my head down. Mahatma is a great soul. I'm a disciple. I'm dedicated to his path, his footsteps. Not only me, my grandparents, my father. My father was murdered also. He lived for his truth, his words. And I follow my father too. When I was 12 years old, I participated in Satyagraha from that time from my parents. My path I was following. I'm a disciple. I'm dedicated to Mahatma Gandhi's journey. And in this way, I could accomplish, I could do a lot of things, not me, with the people together as a family. Sri Lanka, India, and also in Hawaii. When we talk about nonviolence, I talk about myself, I violate myself. When I violate myself, how can I have non-violence? You have to come to the place of peace, love, and Mahatma Gandhi, what he said, be the change. We have to change ourselves. We have to transform. When we transform ourselves, we transform the world. Everything is in you. That is what it is teaching. By this inspiration, today, we created a farm here. It's called Mauna Farm. Mauna means inner silence. That is one of his teachings. Bring community all together. Our time has come. We are in a critical time. This is the time we change ourselves. We transform ourselves for good, service to others, love one another, help ourselves, help others, make it a better world for all of us, all the creatures, all the people. When I talk about unity, we are all connected with each and every one, our souls. We are all one family. We cannot deny that. And the second thing, when I stand here, look around me, birds are singing, trees are growing, mountains are there. We are part of it. We are part of nature. This is our path. We cannot go away from this. We cannot go against nature. I'm very thankful to Dr. Rajkumar, Dr. Shintani, and the grandson of Mahatma Gandhi, Arun Gandhi. And also I want to say a big mahalo to Still Moving Center. They really, Rene and Cliff, they put my vision in Hawaii to peace, coming together, and I'm very thankful to all of you. That is my prayer from my heart. That is my truth. I bow down very humbly to all of you. Thank you. Mahalo.
Namaste. My name is Zeny Ogrisseg, and I'm so honored to be part of this commemoration of Mahatma Gandhi's 151st birthday with the Gandhi International Institute of Peace and Still and Moving Center here in Hawaii. Today I'm going to be sharing a bhajan or devotional song that was one of Gandhi's favorites. Gandhi's mother was a Vaishnavite or devotee of the god Vishnu. So when he was growing up, he used to hear his mom chanting these kinds of songs. The song I'm going to be singing is actually a poem written by the poet Narasimha Mehta from Gujarat about 500 years ago. I think the reason that this is one of Gandhi's favorite songs and poems is because it really encompasses everything that he stood for, how he lived his life, and what he believed in. So before I sing the song for you, I wanted to read the translation of the poem. Again, this is called Vaishnava Janato. Narasimha Mehta writes to us from 500 years ago. Who is a true devotee of God? Who is the true Vaishnava? One who feels the pain of others and helps those who are in misery. He never lets ego or pride enter his mind. He respects the entire world. He does not belittle anyone. He keeps his words, actions, and thoughts pure, sees all equally, and renounces greed and avarice. views others as extensions of his family. Their tongue might get tired, but he will never speak falsehood. His hands will never touch the property of another, does not succumb to worldly attachments, is detached from all worldly pleasures, and encompasses the absence of greed and deceit. He has renounced all lust and anger. The author of this poem, Narsi, would be grateful to meet such a soul by whose virtue liberates their entire lineage. I especially love that last line because it's exactly what happened. Mahatma Gandhi helped to free his people. But not only did he help his people, his example gives us the tools by which we can free ourselves, even today. So I'm going to go ahead and chant it for you. If you know the lyrics, you can sing along. Vaishnava Janato tene kahiye je pira parai jani re. Vaishnava Janato tene kahiye je pira parai jani re. Paradukhe upakara karito ye manabhimane na ane re. Vaishnava Janato tene kahiye je pira parai jani re. Sakala lokama sahune vande nindana kare ke nire. Vacha kacha mana nischala rake dana dana janani te nire. Vaishnava Janato tene kahiye je pira parai jani re. Vanalobhine kapatarahite che kama krodha nivaryare. Bane narasayotenu darasana karata kula eko tera taryare. Vaishnava Janato tene kahiye je pira parai jani re. Vaishnava Janato tene kahiye je pira parai jani re. Vaishnava Janato, Vaishnava Janato, Vaishnava Janato, Vaishnava Janato. Namaste, and thank you for having me.
Mahalo, Zeny, and Sooriya. Full biographies and information on all of today's speakers are available at www.stillandmovingcenter.com under Events. We encourage you to read a little more about everyone sharing today. Their journeys are both unique and inspiring. As a nonprofit devoted to nonviolence, we gratefully welcome your contributions to the future development of the Gandhi International Institute for Peace programs and activities at www.gandhianpeace.org/donate. For every donation over $50, you may receive a GIIP logo Be the Change mask, and for every donation over $100, receive a book of Gandhi's quotes. Masks and books are also available for purchase at www.stillandlivingcenter.com under Boutique E. Our next distinguished guest keynote speaker is Ambassador Anwarul K. Chowdhury, former Undersecretary General and High Representative of the United Nations. He is the author of several books and worked for 30 years as a journalist for the Times of India. Oh, pardon me. Small change. Okay. Ambassador Chowdhury has devoted many years as an inspirational champion for sustainable peace and development, ardently advancing the cause of the global movement for the culture of peace that has energized civil society all over the world. As a career diplomat, Ambassador Chowdhury has a wealth of experience in the critical issues of our time: peace, sustainable development, and human rights. His initiative in March 2000 and the President of the Security Council led to the adoption of the groundbreaking UN Security Council Resolution 1325, in which the Council recognized for the first time the role and contribution of women in the area of peace and security, and the equality of their participation in all decision-making levels. Publicly speaking and advocacy for the culture of peace, women's equality, and global citizenship keep him engaged at the present time. Today, he will discuss Mahatma's nonviolence, essence of the culture of peace for a new humanity.
Thank you very much for these welcoming remarks and introducing me. Greetings to all of you from Manhattan, New York, the host city of the United Nations. I will begin by presenting to you parts of the message of UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres on the International Day of Nonviolence. And I quote, "In marking the birthday of Mahatma Gandhi, this International Day highlights the remarkable power of nonviolence and peaceful protest. It is also a timely reminder to strive to uphold values that Gandhi lived by: the promotion of dignity, equal protection for all, and communities living together in peace." On this year's observance, we have a special duty: stop the fighting to focus on our common enemy, COVID-19. There is only one winner of conflict during a pandemic: the virus itself. As the pandemic took hold, I called for a global ceasefire. Now is the time to intensify our efforts. Let us be inspired by the spirit of Mahatma Gandhi and the enduring principle of the United Nations Charter. End of quote. I thank Gandhi International Institute of Peace and its dynamic president, Mr. Kumar, for this invitation to me to speak as the keynote speaker here. This is the 15th annual observance of the birth anniversary of Mahatma by the Gandhi International Institute for Peace. We have been collaborating for quite some time, Mr. Rajkumar and myself, and I'm happy that finally we can uh, connect in this event through a virtual program. And I didn't find Dr. Gandhi speaking before me because that is what I was told, but I would recall his keynote speech at the United Nations High Level Forum on the Culture of Peace in 2015 at UN headquarters in New York. It is so well remembered. Everyone still remembers that speech that Mr. Gandhi gave to us at the United Nations. Remarkable. And I would like to, maybe he needed to go out of the screen for some emergency, but I hope he will come back and speak to us because all of us are eagerly waiting to listen to him. And then I am delighted that I see that Dr. Radhakrishnan from India is joining us today, and I have very fond memories of sharing the podium in Oslo, Norway, for speaking on nonviolence and the culture of peace. I remember him and Mrs. Radhakrishnan were very affectionate to me and my wife, and I cherish those moments very dearly. And then I have, of course, a Hawaiian joining us, Dr. Shintani, who is a good friend, and we work together on many other fronts. The theme of my keynote speech today is Mahatma's nonviolence, essence of the culture of peace for new humanity. The Mahatma affirmed that he was not a visionary, but a practical idealist. He affirmed that nonviolence is the law of our species, as violence is the law of the brute. The spirit lies dormant in the brute, and he knows no law but that of physical might. The dignity of man requires obedience to a higher law, to the strength of the spirit. End of quote. It is said that Mahatma was the first in human history to extend the principle of nonviolence from the individual to the social and political plane. He entered politics for the purpose of experimenting with the nonviolence and establishing its validity. The Mahatma has said that, and I quote him, nonviolence is the greatest and most active force in the world. One cannot be passively nonviolent. One person who can express ahimsa, that is nonviolence, in life exercises a force superior to all the force of brutality. End of quote. I believe wholeheartedly that Mahatma Gandhi's principle of nonviolence or ahimsa has found true reflection in the life of a great son of the United States, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., in his own struggle for equality and justice. Dr. King considered his Nobel Peace Prize as, and I quote, a profound recognition that nonviolence is the answer to the critical political and racial questions of our time. How profound. And then he continues, the need for man to overcome oppression without resorting to violence. End of quote. I reiterate this mainly to highlight the need for revisiting those words in view of what is happening in many parts of our world, including in this country. As I have stated on many occasions, my life's experience has taught me to value peace and nonviolence as the essential components of our existence. They unleash the positive forces of good that are so needed for human progress. Peace is integral to human existence in everything we do, in everything we say, and in every thought we have. There is a place for peace. It is important to realize that the absence of peace takes away the opportunities that we need to prepare ourselves, to empower ourselves, to face the challenges of our lives, individually and collectively. This intellectual and spiritual inspiration is implanted in me through the Mahatma's own life and his words. The United Nations was born in 1945 out of the ashes of the Second World War. The United Nations Declaration and Program of Action on Culture of Peace was born in 1999 in the aftermath of the Cold War. I was the chair of the 9-month-long negotiations from 1998 to 1999 that produced that program of action on culture of peace. For more than 2 decades, I have continued to devote considerable time, energy, and effort to realizing the implementation of this landmark norm-setting decision of the United Nations. For me, this has been a realization of my personal commitment to peace, inspired by the Mahatma and my humble contribution to humanity. My work took me to different parts of the world, into the farthest corners, and I have seen time and again how people, even the humblest and the weakest, have contributed to building the culture of peace in their personal lives, in their families, in their communities, and in their nations. All these contributing to global peace one way or the other. The focus of my work and advocacy has been on advancing the culture of peace, which aims at making peace and nonviolence a part of our own self, our own personality, a part of our existence as human beings. I believe this will empower ourselves to contribute more effectively to bring inner as well as outer peace. In simple terms, the culture of peace as a concept means that every one of us needs to consciously make peace and nonviolence a part of our daily existence. We should know how to relate to one another without being aggressive, without being violent, without being disrespectful, and without neglect and without peace. We should not isolate peace as something separate or distant. More so in today's world, so full of negativity, tension, poverty, and suffering, the culture of peace should be seen as the essence of a new humanity, a new global civilization based on inner oneness and outer diversity. In my keynote address on human security, an essential element for creating the culture of peace, at the Victoria University in Wellington, New Zealand, in August 2007, inspired by Mahatma's eternal words, be the change that you want to see in the world. I underscored that, and I quote myself, peace is a prerequisite for human development. We must undertake efforts to inculcate the culture of peace in ourselves. We cannot expect the world to change if we do not start first and foremost with changing ourselves at the individual levels. End of quote. The objective of the culture of peace is the empowerment of people, as has been underscored by the global leader for peace and Buddhist philosopher Daisaku Ikeda. As we say, peace does not mean just to stop war, but also to stop oppression, injustice, and neglect. The culture of peace has been a powerful tool in promoting a global consciousness that serves the best interest of a just and sustainable peace. I'm encouraged that the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development of the United Nations, which was adopted in 2015, includes, among others, the culture of peace and nonviolence, as well as global citizenship as the essential component of today's education. This realization has now become more pertinent in the midst of the ever increasing militarism and militarization that is destroying both our planet and our people. The Mahatma asserted that, and I quote him, one thing is certain, if the mad race for armaments continues, it is bound to result in a slaughter such as never occurred in history. If there is a victor left, the very victory will be a living death for the nation that emerges victorious. There is no escape from the impending doom save through a bold and unconditional acceptance of the nonviolent method with all its glorious implications. End of quote. Dr. King had advised us rightly, and I quote him, I suggest that the philosophy and strategy of nonviolence become immediately a subject for study and for serious experimentation in every field of human conflict, by no means excluding the relations between nations. End of quote. The last decade of violence in human security should lead to a growing realization in the world of education today that children should be educated in the art of peaceful, non-violent, non-aggressive living. Never has it been more important for the next generation to learn about the world and understand and respect its diversity. I want to underscore one particular aspect in this context. In the culture of peace movement, we are focusing more attention on children because that contributes in a major way to the sustainable and long-lasting impact on our societies. As the Mahatma's words highlight, And I quote, real education consists in drawing the best out of yourself. End of quote. An essential message that I have experienced from my work for the culture of peace is that we should never forget that when women, half of the world's 7+ billion people, are marginalized, there is no chance for our world to get sustainable peace in the real sense. Women bring a new breadth, quality, and balance of vision to a common effort for moving away from the cult of war towards the culture of peace. Without peace, development cannot be realized. Without development, peace is not achievable. But without women, neither peace nor development is possible. I believe the culture of peace is not a quick fix. It is a movement, not a revolution. Let us remember that the work for peace is a continuous process. Each one of us can make a difference in that process. The culture of peace cannot be imposed from outside. It must be realized from within. That is the message of Mahatma's nonviolence. Thank you.
Mahalo, Ambassador. And for anyone just joining us, we're here celebrating the International Day of Nonviolence and Mahatma Gandhi Day, hosted by the Gandhi International Institute for Peace and Still and Moving Center in Honolulu, Hawaii. If you would like to know more about either organization or the lineup or any of our presenters, please do visit www.stillandmovingcenter.com. And you can also donate to gandhianpeace.org/donate. We have some wonderful items that can be purchased in addition to be gifted to friends that are timely in this time of the coronavirus. My name is Willow Chang, and I'm very graciously delighted to be your host today. We're going to move on with the rest of our program. Following our stirring keynote speaker, please join me in welcoming Maui's own Akari Ueoka. Akari claims that dance has saved, sustained, and has become her lifeblood. During the darkest hours of her life, dance was always there. In dancing, she found a safe haven where she could be herself and interact with the world, as well as find and offer peace. A student of many dance forms, including Izanai Yokaso in Japan, Akari's life changed forever when she met Sarala Dandekar on Maui. After falling in love with Odissi, a classical Indian dance, Akari began her apprenticeship under Sarala's guidance, studied in India, and gave her Mancha Pravesh, or debut ceremony, indicating the completion of her formal training in 2012. Odissi is a technically challenging dance, and it requires patience and practice to improve. She takes much pleasure in sharing this traditional and deeply spiritual art form. I'm going to go off script here and let you know I've had the honor to study with both of them, and Akari is truly a beautiful, beautiful dancer and teacher. The title of Akari's performance today is Mankia Veena, choreographed by the late Padma Bhushan Guru Kelucharan Mohapatra, composed by the late Bhuban Shawar Mishra.
संगीत रसिके जय लीला सुख प्रिय
Deeply moving work, Akari, and thank you. Our next two speakers come to us from India. Honorable Pramod Sawant is an Indian politician and is the 11th and current Chief Minister of Goa. Sawant represents the Sankelam constituency in the Goa Legislative Assembly and served as the Speaker of the Goa Assembly before being sworn in as Chief Minister after the death of the sitting Chief Minister Manohar Parrikar. He is an Ayurveda medical practitioner by profession, and today he will discuss the positive influence of Mahatma Gandhi's teaching in the modern world. Professor Nilakanta Radhakrishnan has distinguished himself in several fields as an educator, administrator, founder of various educational institutions, author of over 40 books, journalist, trainer of youth in nonviolence, theater expert, actor, human rights activist, and researcher of folk arts. Professor Radhakrishnan is an important source of inspiration to a number of initiatives all over the world, especially in the field of training in nonviolence. He sums up his life and achievements as, quote, a rare combination of intellectualism and activism, close quote. The subject of his talk today is From Violence to Nonviolence.
On the auspicious occasion of Mahatma Gandhi Jayanti celebration, I wish and pray good health to each and everyone. Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, popularly known as Mahatma Gandhi, born on 2nd October 1869 in Gujarat, was a huge advocate of non-violence. Gandhi's ultimate search was for the righteous conduct. His struggle and action were manifestation to evolve his own value system. He was a pious, truthful, and religious. He believed in simple living and high thinking. Everybody who came in contact with him were so deeply influenced by his personality. He was a champion of democracy and was deadly opposed to dictatorial rule. The Gandhi showed India and world the path of truth and non-violence. He believed that it was the truth alone that prevailed in the end. Gandhi worked day and night for the freedom of his country. Gandhi defeated the mighty British Empire not with swords or guns, but by means of strange and utterly new weapons of truth and ahimsa. He worked all through his life for the abolition of untouchability. Gandhi worked hard for the community in India. Mahatma Gandhi always stood for the communal harmony, better known as the father of nation, because of he was instrumental in attaining freedom for us. He was the maker of modern India. Mahatma Gandhi launched the movement like Champaran Satyagraha, Kheda Satyagraha, Khalifat movement, non-cooperation, Salt Satyagraha, civil disobedience, and Quit India movement. Gandhiji is also unique in a political history of India. He invented the entirely new and human technique for the liberation struggle of the people and carried out with the greatest energy and devotion. He believed that the India resides in village with harmonious unity of people. The government, both at the center and the state, are enduring to usher in a progress and development in all sectors, be it healthcare, education, science and technology, infrastructure, etc. The government has also implemented various welfare schemes for the betterment of youth to stand their own feet by venturing into the self-employment. Let us all continue to connect to the underprivileged people and work towards the achievement desired efforts to bear fruits. On this occasion, let us all resolve to work unitedly to make this world a better place to live in.
Greetings and namaskar. Let me express my profound happiness and gratitude to the organizers of this webinar dedicated to Gandhi on the occasion of the 151st birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi. All over the world, webinars, discussions, and other programs are being held this week to highlight the contribution Gandhi made to humanity in the globe, particularly in the global nonviolent awakening. With Gandhi, actually, in our onward march to discover nonviolent alternatives, a new chapter was born. People who were under the impression, or people who were creating the impression that violence is natural and it is inherent in human nature, it is inherent in nature, and nonviolence is a freak development, particularly it's an oriental fad. It is how nonviolence was viewed when Gandhi launched his nonviolent campaign to highlight the nonviolent potentials of a human being. The 21 years of his work in South Africa highlighted a lifestyle and also conscious efforts to develop alternatives steeped in nonviolent vision, that too a life in harmony with nature, a life dedicated to the exploration of collective living as well as development of respect for each other and working together, sharing the joys of everybody, and working in a community with the vision of an alternative future. But then the two ashrams Gandhi started in South Africa, the Tolstoy farm and the Phoenix ashram, were in fact totally dedicated to people being encouraged to look at their potentials and being encouraged to develop their capacity fully in consonance with the laws of nature, besides taking cognizance of ventilating, expressing their anger, their protest, their frustrations, uh, and standing up against exploitations and suppressions of all nature. He also highlighted the importance of getting out of the fear, a certain kind of fear complex which was controlling by and large the suppressed people of particularly the Indian segment of workers there in South Africa. As the great Nelson Mandela said more than once, Gandhi taught us several lessons, lessons of harmony, lessons of cooperation, lessons of reconciliation, and lessons steeped in human values of affirmation, as well as developing a new view of life, an alternative lifestyle. He said this eloquently, and he even described Gandhi as the father of two nations, South Africa and India. Long before Nelson Mandela appeared on the scene, uh, Dr. Martin Luther King, realizing the importance of active nonviolence which Gandhi was promoting, he said, "From my Christian background, I learned the lesson of love from the Bible, but the operational tactics of converting love into action, love into non-violent action, I got from Gandhi. Either we survive with non-violence or we perish with violence," Martin Luther King said eloquently. After Martin Luther King, it became a worldwide something like whirlwind sweeping across several continents, freedom fighters, human rights activists, and people who were denied justice on various counts, and women who were fighting for gender equality, and many other categories of people adopted nonviolence not because they thought that they had no alternative. They realized from Gandhi that nonviolence was a weapon of the strong, and certainly it is not a weapon of the weak. Let us remember, Gandhi said more than one that nonviolence is the greatest weapon humanity is endowed with. Friends, during the last 50 years or 60 years, nonviolence has become a strong instrument which uh, gave hope, instilled hope in the hopeless, and it became a power instrument in the hands of those who had absolutely no method to protect their interests.
Aloha. Mahalo to our speakers today. We're here celebrating the International Day of Nonviolence and the Mahatma Gandhi Day, hosted by the Gandhi International Institute for Peace and the Still and Moving Center here in Honolulu, Hawaii. Biographies and information on all of our guests today can be found at www.gaiip.org. toamovingcenter.com under the header Events. Moving along to our next featured performance, this time from Montreal, Canada, where founder and director of Sinha Dance, Roger Sinha, will perform a solo work. Roger is recognized as one of the pioneers in the field of contemporary dance, inspired by non-Western cultural practices in Canada. Born in London to an Armenian mother and an Indian father, and raised in Canada, his personal struggles related to questions of mixed cultural identities and experiences of racism, which became central themes in his choreographic work. His signature contemporary style is characterized by the precision and the explosive energy of the martial arts, and freely inspired by the sophisticated gestural aesthetics of Bharatanatyam. He continues to experiment with different interdisciplinary approaches to dance by integrating new technologies and interactive media, poetry, live music, literature, and theater. Roger says this of today's performance, quote, digital. With my voice and the didgeridoo, I am able to create a unique and unusual sound universe with the use of numerous complex music softwares, and I am also able to loop these sounds and get up and dance to the same music I just created. Everything is improvised, even the sounds, as my selections, which are mapped to my computer keyboard, are completely random. For this event, I will also recite a text from Gandhi ji.
Gandhi, takde takde da.
Our values become our destiny. Mahalo, Roger, for sharing your art with us. In an incredible representation of how Gandhi's philosophy of nonviolence can influence attitudes in the most difficult of situations, we would like to welcome our next speaker, Major Rakesh Bhardwaj. From an early childhood, Rakesh was attracted by the teachings and the life of Mahatma Gandhi and wanted to be a soldier of peace. During his career, Rakesh served in the most inhospitable terrains and hostile environments. Despite all the adversaries and challenges, Rakesh Bhardwaj adopted a policy of nonviolence and also sent a message of peaceful coexistence to the adversary. Major Rakesh will be followed by another broker of peace, Dr. Krishna Reddy. Born in Bangalore and a practicing dentist, Dr. Reddy is the author of various books on national security and the social geopolitical issues. He is the founder and president of the Indian American Friendship Council, which has served as a forum for promoting stronger ties between India and the U.S. Both Presidents Clinton and Barack Obama have acknowledged Dr. Reddy for his service and support. And President George W. Bush, in a statement issued on June 5th of 2002, recognized the importance of Dr. Reddy's pivotal role. Quote, "Your efforts honor the ideals on which the United States was founded." Close quote. It is this very foundation of American ideals upon which Dr. Reddy has devoted his professional career and personal life. Today, Major Rakesh will speak on the modern applications of Gandhian principles, and Dr. Reddy will go over Gandhi's contributions to world peace.
Generations to come will scarce believe that such a one as this ever, in flesh and blood, walked upon this earth. So said Albert Einstein about Gandhi. Aloha, friends. Legacy of Gandhi in 21st century is my topic today. Mahatma Gandhi left an imperishable influence on his age and lasting legacy for coming generations. The great contribution which Gandhi made in 20th century is well known. Gandhi not only made a very important contribution, but also blazed a new trail by investing his moral force that struggles for justice and truth must be based on nonviolence. Gandhi's philosophy of peace endorses the truism. In 21st century, Gandhi remains to be one of the very relevant precursors of conflict resolution. I support finding of Schumacher Institute for Sustainable Systems that Gandhi's thinking can help us in 21st century at a time when the doomsday clock edges forward and we fear we are moving closer than ever before towards
nuclear Armageddon, and irreversible global warming. Farmers are committing suicide. Violence is rampant, and inequalities are threatening the very fabric of society. Gandhi's systematic analysis of the world's problem is as relevant today as when he lived. Gandhian thinking is essentially about a sustainable way of life, an economic system and society in which everyone gains rather than the few become rich at the expense of many. Gandhi influenced American civil rights activist Martin Luther King Jr. when King said, Christ furnished spirit and motivation, but Gandhi gave me the method. In his fight against apartheid, Nelson Mandela said, in a world full of violence and strife, Gandhi's message of peace and nonviolence holds the key to human survival in 21st century. The well-being of one is dependent on the well-being of all. We cannot live happily whilst violence and injustice are going on. Making a few people rich without creating real wealth damages the rest of humanity. Our political system, Gandhi advocated, needs to be participative rather than representative. His philosophy is about synthesis and integration, which is need of the hour. Time magazine named Tibetan spiritual leader, the 14th Dalai Lama, Myanmar's Aung San Suu Kyi, Cesar Chavez, American civil rights activist, Benigno Aquino of the Philippines, Archbishop Desmond Tutu, and Nelson Mandela as children of Gandhi. Ho Chi Minh of Vietnam considered himself as disciple of Gandhi, and among so many other luminaries, Gandhi is also hero of Jack Ma and John Lennon's music Imagine. First ever Black US President Barack Obama, while addressing Indian Parliament, stated, I am mindful that I might not be standing before you as the President of the United States of America had it not been for Gandhi and messages shared with America and the world. In 2009, when asked who was the person dead or alive you would choose to dine with, Obama promptly replied, his biggest inspiration came from Gandhi. It is no surprise that Geir Lundstad, Secretary of Norwegian Nobel Committee, in 2006 said, I quote, the greatest omission in our 106 years history is that undoubtedly Mahatma Gandhi never received Nobel Prize. Gandhi could do without the Nobel Prize, where the Nobel Committee could do without Gandhi is a question, unquote. Some of the successful non-violent revolutions in the world in 21st century have been inspired by Gandhi's Satyagraha. The essence of Satyagraha is soul as a political means, refusing to use brute force against oppression, seeking to eliminate antagonism between the oppressor and the oppressed, aiming to transform or purify the oppressor. It is not inaction, but determined passive resistance and non-cooperation as crystallized by Arthur Herman in his book, Gandhi and Churchill. I would like to mention some of the successful non-violent protests in 21st century, which hold testimony to Gandhi's legacy. Tunisian Revolution of 2010-11, also known as Jasmine Revolution. Chilean student protests, 2011 to 13, popularly known as Chilean Winter. Mothers of the Disappeared challenged the junta in Argentina. In a recent article in Winnipeg Free Press Journal by London-based independent Canadian columnist, only last week, Gwyn Dyer, on 24 September 2020, commented, though peaceful Tiananmen Square protest was down in China in 1989, but it kept notching up victories elsewhere. For example, Serbia, Philippines too, Georgia, Armenia, Ukraine, and Lebanon in the 2000s, and Egypt, Syria, Ukraine too, and Sudan in the 2010s, latest being protests in Hong Kong in 2020. Inspiration of all these revolutions came from Gandhi's non-violent movement against the most powerful British Empire then. In the 21st century, prophecy has come true when he said, I don't want my house to be walked in on all sides and my windows to be stuffed. Gandhi said, I want the culture of all lands to be blown about my house as freely as possible, but I refuse to be blown off by feet by any. The simple but powerful statement would well serve today's world of ideological myopia and self-imposed autarky. Truth and non-violence are the mainstay of Gandhiism. If world has to save itself from self-destruction, Gandhi's non-violence must become the leitmotif of a globalized world and a reformed nuclear structure that would make non-violence a norm between states for 21st century. Rightly, UN celebrates every year 2nd October as International Day of Non-Violence as tribute to Mahatma Gandhi. And ladies and gentlemen, I would like to end with American journalist quote after Mahatma Gandhi's assassination in 1948. Just an old man in loincloth in distant India? Yet, when he died, humanity wept. Mahalo.
Greetings. I want to wish all the people in Hawaii a happy Gandhi Jayanti Day. I must thank all the elected members, the government of Hawaii, many cultural organizations, many networks, and many event organizers. I must thank them for putting this event together. I must thank Dr. Kumar, the author, the community activist, and great friend in Hawaii for putting this event together. Gandhi Jayanti Day, Gandhi birthday celebrations are one of the greatest celebrations that are being done all over the world. Gandhi's contribution has been immense. To give a brief description about Gandhi in my short note, Gandhi was the only person in the world who won the freedom by non-violence against the British tyranny. Gandhi could face the bullets, could face the lathi charges, could face the abuse, and many massacres that were done by the British regime. But still, India won the freedom. India will be the only country in the world who got the freedom with non-violence. In this world of atomic weapons, all kinds of weaponry, to win the war by peace is unbelievable. Gandhi became the only person in the world to give this choice of freedom by non-violence and won the freedom for billions of Indians. India did face the bullets. Over 100 million Indians died during the British cruel rule. But still, India withstood against non-violence. At one park called Jallianwala Bagh Park, over 1,600 Indians were mercilessly shot at the face-to-face distance for a peaceful protest in the park. So was the tyranny of the Britishers. The blood of rivers were flowing during the freedom movement in India. Still, nonviolence was at the top. There were no leader who went to gain the freedom by nonviolence. Gandhi's contribution to the world of nonviolence is remarkable. Every country in the world, every leader in the world knows Gandhi. Every child in the world knows Gandhi and his peace contribution. He showed a path how to live peacefully without rising arms and weaponry against the humans. India's contribution in this field of nonviolence is immense. I hope the world follows the nonviolent path. That way we can live in peace. Unfortunately, in India, towards the end, India broke up in two parts with the religious factions. Thousands of Hindus died. This hurt Gandhi very much, but still the non-violence went on. Gandhi became immortal, and he kept his non-violence path open to the entire world. Again, I thank the people of Hawaii for their share and contribution joining us on this occasion. I'm sure every child, every citizen is enjoying the cultural events for this evening. And may God be with you, and may God bring peace to you all. Thank you. Bye.
Aloha. If you're just joining us, I'm your host for this wonderful event. My name is Willow Chang, and we're celebrating the International Day of Nonviolence and the Mahatma Gandhi Day, hosted by Gandhi International Institute for Peace and the Still and Moving Center in Honolulu, Hawaii. If you're curious, this is exactly where we are. We are here at the Still Moving Center in front of this lovely Shiva Nataraj and mural. Beautiful space. As a nonprofit, we're devoted, and this is for gifts, to nonviolence, and we gratefully welcome your contributions to the future development of the Gandhi International Institute for Peace programs and activities at gandhiandpeace.org/donate. For every donation over $50, you can receive a GIIP logo mask, and for every donation over $100, receive a book of Gandhi's quotes. Now let's enjoy our next performer, sharing her contribution from Honolulu, Sequoia Carr-Brown. Sequoia is an international performance artist and the founder of a collaborative creative arts and education company, Strange Fruit Express. The award-winning company strives to empower communities with engaging educational, mixed media performances, and workshops. In her dance today, cowrie shells and rugs represent reverence to her ancestors in ancient Africa's currency, as well as India's weaving industry that was undermined by British rule. Historically, African Americans have violently suffered similar disenfranchisement. It is through economic sovereignty that oppressed people can overcome systemic bigotry. Inspiration for the piece, spinning, weaving, praying, is based on Gandhi's weaving practice, representing self-reliance via entrepreneurship. There is a meditative element to spinning and weaving, the calm of the waves churning and spinning. The motions are reflected in the dance phrasings. Mahalo, Sequoia. Spinning and praying. We move on to our next speaker and peace advocate for children, Judith Genya. Judith Genya has earned numerous U.S. and international awards and recognition highlighting her achievements as a humanitarian and peace activist. Through her commitment to the well-being and safety of children, she founded and directed the Global Children's Organization, which brought together children from all sides of armed conflicts and developed and taught peacemaking and nonviolent conflict resolution skills that are in use throughout the entire world. Today, she will speak on how Gandhi's thoughts are relevant in today's world.
Thank you so much. I am speaking to you from the center of Mexico in San Miguel Allende. Can you all hear me? I hope. Yes, good. Okay. Gandhi said, the future depends on what you do today in the present. We are living in the most unnormal times. All around the world, we see leaders who seem not to care about being a good person or behaving like one, or the effects of their actions and policies on their citizens and the rest of the world. Yet you and I must ask ourselves often, does my behavior live up to my ethical principles? Does this practice, this policy, reflect what deep down I know is right? Does it align with my commitment to the interdependency of life, to living nonviolently? Does it advance social justice? Does it make us into what Dr. Martin Luther King called the beloved community? Our humanity is measured against some very basic principles of altruism. My character and yours is made real in human love and compassion. This highest standard goes beyond mere justice and fairness, although those two are essential. When you or I look at our lives, when we see how to improve upon ourselves and our world, sometimes it takes just putting on fresh new clothes over the old. We can build upon the character we've been creating. We can simply keep on. We build on our actions of the past and continue to develop. Other times it takes discarding all the old clothes and starting anew. Gandhi knew the power of changing one's clothing and putting on new and different clothing. We are all imperfect, and yet we want to act decently in a chaotic and troubling world. Philosopher Mark Nepo said it well in a piece called We Are Rare. We are rare, not perfect, with our hands full of groceries, our heads full of things to do, our hearts full of memories, and our dreams full of plans. We tend to think if only we could get away or finish crossing off the things on that list, if we could only undo what has been done or what needs to be done, we might then live more completely, more perfectly. But we are human beings, flawed, colorful beings that eat plans and memories for food. For though we aspire to self-mastery and peace of mind, we are only momentarily whole. These are moments of enlightenment, when the clarity and compassion of centuries arise in us, and we are suddenly more than we were, or we are, only to trip on the garbage the very next day and to say something hurtful the very next minute to the one we love most. I used to think of these come downs as failures, as evidence that I wasn't trying hard enough, and they would prick me with slivers of inadequacy. I often felt discouraged, as if there were something essential I just couldn't learn. For a while, I felt deeply flawed, but I've come to understand that this is only the earthiness of our human condition. We are in moments pure and ageless as light, and with the very next breath, we drop things or brose the treasures of a lifetime. We need to soothe ourselves, not blame ourselves. We are rare, not perfect. Mahatma Gandhi was like that. He was rare, not perfect. He was a good man. He inspired millions of others. He created a political movement. He created nonviolence as a method of political influence and ways to run a society and life. And Gandhi was rare, not perfect. Look at the impact he had and continues to have 78 years after his death. Our task is to create harmony amidst the chaos around us and then take action. The Honorable John Lewis said, "Make good trouble." Gandhi was a man who made a lot of good trouble. He pushed and prodded, he collaborated, and he was willing to stand alone. And by every means he could think of, he moved the British Empire and Indian society toward a better world. As you look around today in beautiful Hawaii, an island paradise, what changes need to be there? What wrongs have been put in place in this paradise and held in place by systems of power? What kind of good trouble can you make in Gandhi's image and create a more perfect society? We need to dig deep into our moral center. We need to look closely at ourselves in the mirror and into the hearts of our neighbors and fellow citizens. We need to embrace a patriotism that is broad, inclusive, and just. We need to act like citizens of a decent world. When you act responsibly, speak with truth, act ethically, and live with kindness and love, even in this crazy world, you can find some peace. As Gandhi said, happiness is when what you think, what you say, and what you do are in harmony. Live in harmony now with your family, neighbors, and in righteousness with the land and the planet. Mahalo.
Mahalo, Ms. Jenya. We're here celebrating the International Day of Nonviolence and Mahatma Gandhi Day, hosted by the Gandhi International Institute for Peace and the Still and Moving Center here in Honolulu, Hawaii. Biographies and information on all of our guests today can be found at www.stillandmovingcenter.com under the header Events. Our next speakers representing Hawaii are in the thick of it, as they were, applying Gandhi's wisdom to their everyday decision-making as the world seeks to challenge our stability, peace, and health. Lieutenant Governor Josh Green is a local doctor, husband, and father of two who has spent his life caring for Hawaii families. After completing his medical training, Josh joined the National Health Corps and started his life's work as a family physician and ER doctor in rural hospitals and clinics on the Big Island. He served in the Hawaii State House of Representatives from 2004 to 2008, and in the Hawaii State Senate from 2008 to 2018, where he chaired the Health Committee and Human Services Committee. The hopes, challenges, and values of the families he cares for inspired Josh to do more to make life better for the people of Hawaii, and he is honored to serve as their Lieutenant Governor. His topic today will be, quote, Pandemic and Peace in 2020, close quote. And our second speaker who will follow is Senator Mike Gabbard. He represents Hawaii's 20th State Senate District, and he has served in the Hawaii State Senate since 2006. He currently serves as a chair of the Agriculture and Environment Committee. Prior to that, he was a chair of the Energy and Environment Committee for 7 years. Senator Gabbard was a supporter of Act 5 in 2015 to designate October 2nd of each year as Mahatma's Gandhi Day in Hawaii. Senator Gabbard today will present an honorary certificate from the State Senate.
Aloha, everyone. Thank you for including me. My name is Josh Green. I'm your Lieutenant Governor here in Hawaii, and I'm so honored to speak to distinguished friends and guests, people who are interested in peace most of all. On the 15th Mahatma Gandhi Day celebration, it is so wonderful to reflect on the words and the deeds of one of humanity's greatest people. I'd like to start with a very brief reason why I feel so connected to this day, and that is that I was fortunate enough to choose to be a physician while traveling in India in 1988. On a train between Madras and Delhi, the Indian people took me in, and I was, as a young man, far away from home, amazed at the generosity of the Indian people. And it was on that train where some of the most wonderful people told me tales of Gandhi and why he was so central in every way to India. And so I have always felt a strange kinship with Gandhi and the people of India. So thank you again for including me. I'd like to start my brief statement just with a short quote, and I'll probably reflect on a couple quotes from Gandhi. The first quote I'd like to mention or remind us of was when Gandhi said, "If we are to teach real peace in this world, and if we are to carry on a real war against war, we shall have to begin with the children." And I start with this quote today after I was asked to share some thoughts about the nexus between peace and what we're going through as a people now with COVID. I thought of this quote because I wondered, how will our children reflect on this era of COVID? Children are often the casualties of conflict. They're the greatest casualties when there is not peace in the world. And I thought to myself, what happens when children begin to develop in a world where they are isolated? When they see the impact of a pandemic and can't understand it completely. And so I thought Gandhi's vision and his wisdom on children should be reflected in this brief comment. And I think that we have to hearken back to how we treat our children as we get through this era of COVID, where for a year or maybe longer, they wonder why they can't be with their friends or family and why there are challenges in life. I also wanted to consider how our children feel in a world where we have allowed violence to occur, violence in many cases against people of color. When we see Black men or women injured in America, I wonder how our children perceive that when they themselves don't even understand race early in life, when people who are different suffer. And that was obviously always a theme of Gandhi's life. Gandhi, in his time dealing with the British Empire and wondering to himself while he was an attorney, why he would be treated so differently. And then, of course, the historic challenges he overcame. So I'd say we have to remedy these challenges. We have to remedy the isolation. We have to remedy the violence against minorities and people of color so that our children don't feel that we've let them down. And that has to be done in the spirit of what Mahatma Gandhi taught us so many years ago. The next quote I'd like to give and remember from Gandhi is that the future, Gandhi said, depends on what we do in the present. So I'd like to just say that we have the challenge right in front of us. Though we're struggling right now with COVID, we're struggling with violence, we're struggling with isolation, we can help our children to understand that there's a peaceful future ahead for us. The pandemic has really threatened and strained our people. It's strained our families. Across the world, 34 million individuals have been confirmed with COVID. I have no doubt there's another 100 million individuals that have actually suffered the disease. I went through COVID and only recovered a week ago. Even the President of the United States has recently been diagnosed with COVID. So it can touch us all. But the pandemic will leave an impression, a lasting impression on our children. It will affect our economy, and it has affected our people, especially those who struggle the most. So children, once again, will be caught in the crosshairs of this pandemic. And I want us to do what Gandhi said and create a future that depends not on the past, but what we do in the present to help all people overcome the isolation and the poverty and the challenges that this has created for us. Many people have noted that poverty and isolation can be a form of violence also. And as we know, no one stood up against violence, and I should say indiscriminate violence. No one stood up against that violence like Gandhi did. Separation of families from one another is a form of violence. Dying alone could be a form of violence. And so these are all things that we have to wrestle with through the pandemic, but also we have to recall the spirit of Gandhi in order to overcome these challenges. There are good things to reflect on in the pandemic era, though it's a challenge for us all. I think that people have begun to reassess what's the most important in their lives. I think that this time where we've often been asked to stay at home, but fortunately often with our families, has meant that people can kind of now prioritize the things that were always most important in life. So spending time with my family, seeing families come closer together, hearing stories that are so mundane of fathers taking their children fishing, of going for long walks, of being just together when you can't be with others in the family, I think will be a lasting important thing that comes from this COVID crisis. So I think that there are ways for us to reach a peaceful end to this crisis. I think there are ways for us to grow from it as a people and as a humanity. I hope that we'll do that together. And then I'd just like to close with one more brief quote from Mahatma Gandhi before I turn this over to a dear friend of mine, Senator Gabbard. I want to recall that Gandhi reminded us of this. Gandhi said, apropos of challenges in society and challenges that may not even be war, but that do affect humanity, Gandhi said, peace will not come out of a clash of arms, but out of justice lived and done by unarmed nations in the face of long odds. And though there are odds that we have to overcome with this crisis, we will, and will achieve a peaceful future. Thank you again for including me in this special day. Mahalo.
Aloha and namaste. And thank you, Lieutenant Governor Green, for your very nice presentation. I sincerely hope you and your families, everyone out there, are well during these surreal pandemic times that we're living in. It's an honor for me to join this celebration of the International Day of Nonviolence and Mahatma Gandhi Day. Gandhi's message of change through peaceful resistance couldn't be more important as our country and the world face forever wars, demonstrations, violence, rioting, and looting. There's so much injustice in our world that needs to change for us to live in peace and harmony. And Gandhi showed us the way by the life he led and the incredible changes that he made happen in his native India. His legacy will live on for future generations to appreciate and learn from. So I'd now like to present this honorary certificate from the State Senate that was co-sponsored by myself and Senator Brian Taniguchi. This is honoring and commending the Gandhi International Institute for Peace upon the celebration of the International Day of Nonviolence and the 15th Mahatma Gandhi Day celebration in Hawaii. Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, also known as Mahatma, was born on October 2nd, 1869. He became the leader of Indian nationalism in British-ruled India and led India to independence through the pioneering use of nonviolent civil disobedience and passive resistance, inspiring various political leaders and civil rights movements across the world to the present day. Gandhi is commemorated annually on October 2nd with a national holiday in India and with the International Day of Nonviolence worldwide, established by the United Nations General Assembly on June 15th, 2007, by the adoption of Resolution ARES 61271. The resolution reaffirms the universal relevance of the principle of nonviolence and the desire to secure a culture of peace, tolerance, understanding, and nonviolence. The International Day is an occasion to disseminate the message of nonviolence through education and public awareness. Here in Hawaii, the Gandhi International Institute for Peace was founded by Dr. Kumar with a mission to provide information, consultation, education, and training to resolve conflict in a nonviolent manner. An initial effort to promote public awareness was a request to the state legislature to commemorate the inspiration, tolerance, and enduring legacy of Mohandas Gandhi on the date of his birth. During the 2015 legislative session, the legislature unanimously adopted Senate Bill 332, proposing to designate October 2nd of each year as Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi Day, as a day of recognition and observance. On April 9th, 2015, Governor David Ige signed the bill into law as Act 5, making Hawaii the first state in the country to so honor Gandhi. October 2nd, 2020 marks the 151st birthday of Mohandas Gandhi, the annual observation of the International Day of Nonviolence, and the celebration of Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi Day in Hawaii. The State Senate honors and commends the Gandhi International Institute for Peace upon the celebration of the International Day of Nonviolence and the 15th Mahatma Gandhi Day celebration hosted by Honolulu's Still and Moving Center. We are grateful for your efforts to serve our state by championing the cause of nonviolence and reminding us of the true aloha spirit. We wish you continued success in the fulfillment of your mission to honor the legacy of Mahatma Gandhi while promoting a culture of peace, tolerance, and understanding for all. Mahalo, namaste, and ke akua me ke aloha. God bless you.
And mahalo, Lieutenant Governor Green and Senator Gabbard. As we heard from Judith Zeny, children are the future of our peaceful world, and they can be powerful advocates for peace, giving children around the world the opportunity to showcase the beauty of their cultural heritage while benefiting needy children. Children Helping Children, also known as CHC, is a multimedia and a multicultural program founded in 1991 to highlight global issues such as AIDS, drug abuse, conflict, poverty, and pollution. Founded by Nada Dalgamuni, international educator and immigrant, and Nobel Peace Prize nominees twice over, CHC represents children from 96 different nations. Dalgamuni's global learning and cultural awareness programs are helping children everywhere think globally and act locally. A brief video presentation from Children Helping Children will then be followed by a presentation from our very own Still and Moving Center, Kumu Hula, Malia, Ko'i'ula'o, Kawa'o, Lehua, Helela. Kumu Malia is a traditionally graduated Kumu Hula and a Lomi Lomi practitioner and trainer, as well as a cultural consultant for the Still and Moving Center. Malia Helela completed her Hula Imiki, which is a graduation, under Kumu Hula Hulu Elo Park in 2002 and studied Oli, the traditional Hawaiian chant, under Kumu Hula Keola Lake. As a member of Kapa o Lono Puha, Malia participates in the sharing of Native Hawaiian healing arts that focus specifically on Lomi'ai and the elements of Hakikino, La'au, Lapa'au, and Ho'oponopono. As Kumafula and Lomi Lomi practitioner, she looks to the Aina, the land, for grounding and inspiration. Her talk today will focus on a modern Hawaiian reflection of the practice of nonviolence known as kapu aloha.
Aloha and welcome to our Day of Nonviolence and Mahatma Gandhi Day. Our Kumu Hula is tied up for the moment, so we are going to proceed to our next segment. So it's my pleasure to introduce our next performer. Her name is Willow Chang. She's been your MC all day. She's a longtime teacher at Still and Moving Center. Sharing her emotive and elegant performances, Willow is an internationally recognized as both a singer and dancer. Her dance training started with studies in Hawaiian hula for 10 years with Kumu Alicia Smith, followed by over 26 years focused on Middle Eastern, Northern African dances, Bollywood, world dance, classical Indian dances, Kuchipudi, Odissi, and Bharatanatyam, as well as Japanese Buto, Tango, Flamenco, Balinese, and modern dance. Today, Willow shares an original fusion dance piece called Bounce, with choreography and costume by Willow, music by Solace, and set to a poem by 17th century Pakistani Sufi poet Bulleh Shah. The translation is as follows. Light a candle and extinguish the darkness. Find your beloved in his dwelling. Don't be proud of your wealth. You'll never tire of accumulating it. You keep inspecting to see what is real and what is fake. Practice what you preach. Weigh the truth. Beware that it does not come back to haunt you. Bulleh Shah, become worthless so that you cannot be appraised. Find your beloved in his dwelling. Bounce will be followed by a presentation on the Peace Diet by Dr. Terry Shintani.
ओना करमान रुपये वाला बड़ बड़ बेना बगे बेना करमान रुपये वाला बड़ बड़ बेना बगे ओ बोलो पूरा तोलो पूरा सट से तेन लगे ओ बोलो पूरा तोलो पूरा सट से तेन लगे दे अगे ओना करमान रुपये वाला बड़ बड़ बेना बगे दे अगे खड़ा खोटा तू पर के जावे पवे सराफ देगे खड़ा खोटा तू पर के जावे पवे सराफ देगे खड़ा खोटा तू पर के जावे पवे सराफ देगे ओना करमान रुपये वाला बड़ बड़ बेना बगे बेना करमान रुपये वाला बड़ बड़ बेना बगे ओ बोलो पूरा तोलो पूरा सट से तेन लगे ओ बोलो पूरा तोलो पूरा सट से तेन लगे खड़ा खोटा तू पर के जावे पवे सराफ देगे खड़ा खोटा तू पर के जावे
Hi, I'm Dr. Terry Shintani. I'm the chair of the advisory board of the Gandhi International Institute for Peace. And for this segment, I'm going to be talking about the peace diet and how diet may have a profound effect on world peace. I'm going to start with a story about one of my mentors. One of my favorite mentors was Michio Kushi, the founder of American Macrobiotics. And the story is about how he began to become an advocate for world peace as a result of World War II. Now, Michio was actually a very brilliant scholar, and he was attending Tokyo University, which is the equivalent of Harvard in Japan, and they did not send him off to war because they kept their top students in Japan so that they could serve the country later. And as a result, he had to endure the fire bombings of Tokyo. And during the fire bombings, his best friend was horribly burned and wound up in the hospital dying. And so Michio visited his best friend. And his best friend told him, "Michio, you are the smartest of all of us. So would you please help this world figure out how to settle its differences without blowing each other to pieces?" So that made a very profound impression on Michio. And so he dedicated his life to world peace in honor of his best friend. And so what he did was he enrolled at Columbia University in New York to study world government. And he really was going to endeavor to help the movement towards world peace. And while he was waiting to go to Columbia University, he came upon this little organization called Center for World Government in a dilapidated old building in Tokyo. And he thought, how could a place like that be a center for world government? So he was curious, and he visited this organization at this little building. And it was started by George Osawa, who was none other than the founder of macrobiotics. Now, George Osawa was not an educated man like Michio was. He was more street smart than anything. But what he had done was he was orphaned in the early 1900s from tuberculosis, which was the leading cause of death in those days. But he himself, his parents died of TB, and he himself caught tuberculosis. But he cured himself with a system which he now calls macrobiotics. And that, in those days, that was a miracle. It was like curing cancer today. Well, Michio had this conversation with George Osawa, and Osawa asked Michio, "So, what do you plan to do?" And Michio said, "Well, I'm going to Columbia University to study world government so I can advocate for world peace." And George Osawa laughed at him, and he said, "If you think learning about world government is going to create world peace, you're a fool." And Michio's taken aback because he's a brilliant scholar. He's not used to having people calling him a fool. So Michio said, "What do you mean?" And George Osawa said, "Look, I don't care how good the government you set up turns out to be. If the people are rotten, the government will be rotten." And so Michio took this to heart, and George Osawa said, "Look, if the people are healthy in body, mind, and spirit, even if the government is poorly designed, the healthy people will make it work." And Michio really, really took this to heart. And so he asked George, "So how do we do this? How do we promote health in body, mind, and spirit?" And of course, George Osawa introduced him to macrobiotics. And macrobiotics is the ancient way of balancing yin and yang based on Chinese medicine as interpreted in Japan for 1,000 years. And he taught this system to Michio. And George said Michio was his best student. And then George Osawa said, "Well, look, since you're going to America, why don't you save America from itself? Because its diet is so bad that it's going to be suffering chronic disease upon chronic disease, and it's going to suffer badly from spiritual sickness. So that was the beginnings of the American macrobiotic movement. Michio went to New York, studied at Columbia University, and started the American macrobiotic movement. And I'm one of Michio's students, and I learned macrobiotics when I was in law school. And I just tried it to see if it would actually work on me. And to my great surprise, I noticed my health returning actually very quickly. And I lost 35 pounds without even thinking about it. And more important than that, my mind cleared up and I started having profound spiritual experiences. And these spiritual experiences guided me from law into becoming a medical doctor and to study nutrition so that I could better understand how food and nutrition and diet would affect not only physical health, but mental and spiritual health as well. And so I put this together in a book called The Peace Diet, which is the title of this talk. And in this book, I describe not only how diet affects physical health, such as diabetes and heart disease and cancer, but I also have a chapter on it called The Physiology of Peace, how diet will affect our calmness, our peacefulness, through the balancing of hormones and neurotransmitters. And if you're interested in this book, it's called The Peace Diet, and you can find it at peacediet.org. And my message to you is this, that diet and physical health, if it's done properly, will enhance your spiritual development as well and make you a much better advocate for world peace. After all, this is the way monks used to eat for thousands of years. Basically a plant-based diet with no junk in it, no stimulants, and it helped people to become physically healthy, mentally healthy, and spiritually healthy. And in this way, diet can affect your health and your spiritual development so you can be a much better advocate for world peace. And by the way, eating in this way will help protect you from COVID-19 that we're all aware of, because it will help to get rid of the comorbidities that make COVID-19 so dangerous. It'll help control obesity, diabetes, heart disease, those things that make COVID-19 more dangerous. So I hope you enjoyed this presentation. If you want more information, go to peacediet.org. I have some free information there, and I wish you health, happiness, peace, and the Lord's blessings always. I'm Dr. Shintani. Aloha.
No ana kia kuai kana hele hele. Iala ia e ke ki o hue kaua koko. E na ki no malui kalani malue ho e ho ulu mai ana o laka I kona mau kahu. O mako. O mako noa. Aloha e, aloha e, aloha e. The opening line of this chant says, Nohoana kia kuai kana hele hele. It means that the divine or the God lives in the wildwood. And Mauna Kea is one such place where the divine lives, it thrives in the wild. Mauna Kea is a deeply sacred mountain. It's one of the few places that you'll see snow in Hawaii. And in fact, the name Mauna Kea means white mountain. Mauna Kea is seen as a protector of the Hawaiian Islands because its mass can deflect hurricanes. Even this year, we've seen a hurricane deflected because of Mauna Kea. And since the 1970s, Mauna Kea has been host to many, many telescopes. It's a unique vantage point with which to see the stars. And the most recent proposed telescope, the 30-meter telescope, also called TMT, it was proposed and really protested from the very beginning, early planning stages, because there had been mismanagement of the mountain, and there's just too many structures up on this most sacred of mountains. And so when plans were pushed through to begin construction on the last pristine peak, our plateau up on Mauna Kea, it galvanized the most tremendous response from people of Hawaii as well as people all the way around the world. What began as the blocking of the access road up to the summit very quickly evolved into, across the street, the establishing of Pu'uhonua o Pu'uhuluhulu. A Pu'uhonua is a place of refuge, and it was seen as a safe place for the children and families of those who were blocking the road. I think the most powerful moment for me was watching when the Hawaiian elders sat in chairs and in wheelchairs, bundled up with blankets, and they held the line. They told all of the young people that it was their time to stand up for the mountain, and that everybody was to sit in silence and in quiet, and just not raise violence, not to use violence in any way. And I remember watching as people were crying on the side in Kupuna. Our elders were in some cases carried to be taken away. And I think that was the most powerful moment, because even as they were being carried away, they were still saying kapu aloha. Everybody, kapu aloha. Stay quiet, stay silent, that this is not right, and that will be enough. And sure enough, it's been over a year now, and the construction of the TMT has still been halted. I think that what has been so powerful to me about this movement is this concept of kapu aloha. Kapu aloha is a term that is somewhat new. I think the values of it have been practiced since time immemorial amongst Hawaiians, but as a rallying cry, as a just as a term for how do we conduct ourselves? What is our sacred conduct? How do we hold ourselves under pressure with aloha? And I think that that as an example, having a movement in a place like Mauna Kea, where there are people even unprepared in slippers dancing on the streets, just so moved to be a part of this movement in a very extreme place, that it just seemed to me to galvanize such an incredible support. And once again, I think that there is a lot that you could look up about Mauna Kea and about kapu aloha. But for me, as a mother, as a Kumu Hula, as a Lomi Lomi practitioner, I was able to visit Mauna Kea and see in real time people being fed. There was a medic team, the Mauna medics, that would provide healthcare. There was counseling. There's a university that evolved literally on the stones, free education, hundreds, dozens. Well, first it was tens, then dozens, and then hundreds of classes in all aspects. And I think that one of the most important driving forces of this movement was kapu aloha. And so I'd like to just read a definition of kapu aloha by one of our Hawaiian scholars. Her name is Manu Meyer. And she says, kapu aloha places a discipline of compassion on all to express aloha for those involved, especially those who are perceived to be polar to our cause. Kapu aloha helps us to intentionalize our thoughts and our words and our deeds without any harm to others. It honors the energy and life found in aloha, compassion, and helps us to focus on its ultimate purpose and meaning. It is a synonym for ahimsa, nonviolence, and peaceful consciousness. And so, like I said, as a mother taking my children, as a Kumu Hula participating in ceremony, as a Lomi Lomi practitioner offering massage to those in need, I think that to be a part of a movement such as this that had such a presence of kapu aloha and a discipline, like Manu Meyer says, a discipline of compassion. How can we still have aloha for somebody who is polar to our cause? How can we have aloha for police officers who are taking away our kupuna? And in fact, one of the policemen that arrested the kupuna got down onto his hands and knees and wept. He wept. And if there had been any violent confrontation on behalf of the protectors, that would have completely changed the entire experience, the entire sense, the entire spirit of kapu aloha. And so I think that being able to witness in my own life with my children and with members of my hula school, it really is a very special thing to see nonviolence in action. And I would like to share, in closing, a hula that was written, again, in support of Mauna Kea back in the early planning stages of TMT. This is a hula, or is a song that was written by a young woman named Havani Rios. And it describes Mauna Kea as the embodiment of Poliahu. Poliahu is the snow goddess of Mauna Kea. And as we affirm the sacred nature of the goddess, we see that reflected in the mountain. And so she is the pure snow. She is the mountain. And she is that voice calling us to, to peaceful, nonviolent action on behalf of our sacred places, on behalf of our people and our health. And so this song is called Poliahu Ike Kapu. Mehe haukea e hele I maiana ma kamauna kola uoho e o mai oi o poliahu I ke kapu e o mai oi. Just as the pure white snow is driven, swirling, the snow is worn on the mountain like hair over the shoulders. Poliahu, you remain sacred. Answer this call. O poliahu ike kapu e o mai oe. So may we all have a discipline of compassion and practice kapu aloha. Mahalo.
Mahalo nui loa, Kumu Malia. And to Dr. Shintani, whom had to speak earlier, we would like to give you some information about Dr. Shintani. Formerly designated as a living treasure in 2006, our speaker, Dr. Shintani, is a unique physician, nutritionist, community health advocate, and a medical school professor. He has served the underserved and the Native Hawaiian communities throughout his career, and as a lawyer, authored the landmark legislation that legalized Native Hawaiian healing practices so that may be practiced and preserved. Currently, he serves as the Associate Chair of Complementary and Alternative Medicine at the University of Hawaii School of Medicine. So thank you again, Dr. Shintani. Our next speaker, also hailing from Hawaii, is Dr. Andrea Malji, Assistant Professor in the Department of International Studies at Hawaii Pacific University. Dr. Malji's research specialty is political violence, nonviolent resistance, and nationalism, with a regional specialization in South Asia. She recently completed a fellowship from the International Center on Nonviolent Conflict to help develop a new course on civil resistance, and she has a forthcoming book with Cambridge University Press on religious nationalism in contemporary South Asia. Today, she will discuss applying Gandhi's principles to 2020, how Gandhi's civil resistance tactics and philosophy can guide our complicated and often violent modern context, how the approach of the satyagraha can help build peace in modern conflicts.
Thank you. Aloha. My name is Andrea Malji, a professor of international studies at Hawaii Pacific University. I'm speaking from the unceded territory of Kanaka Malia on the island of Oahu in Hawaii. For many, 2020 has served as a reminder of how little control we have over societal events. COVID stopped many of our plans without warning. It left us helpless, and as if all of our agency was removed without warning. It was a new feeling for many of us to not be able to do what we want when we want. But this feeling is all too familiar for oppressed people around the world. Events outside of their control impact the type of life they have and the treatment they receive. Their birthplace, their caste, their ethnicity, their gender, their sexual orientation, their religion. Yes, all are created equal, but they still are not treated equally. And it is our responsibility to ensure that the laws of our respective countries do so. This is what Gandhi taught, and the legacy of his message is more important now than ever before, because we are not free until everyone is free. The helplessness we feel in the pandemic does not have to apply in other scenarios. We have the ability to control how we can respond to unjust laws and poor treatment. We can choose to look the other way, or we can use our voice and collective power to rise against the ambivalence toward poverty, violence, inequality, and discrimination. Which is why I want to tell you the story of Dave. Dave was a man without a house that lived near my university. I passed by him every day on the way to work. He was always smiling. He said hello. Whatever food people gave him, he shared with the birds nearby. My university is located in one of the most expensive zip codes in the world. Dave lived on the street underneath condos worth $2 million. To many, the sight of him was a reminder of the abject failings of our system. But rather than address them, we wanted them hidden neatly away. He was frequently and forcefully moved from the street so not to serve as a reminder of the poverty under our noses every day. When I returned to work last week for the first time since the pandemic started, Dave was not there. I hoped that maybe he had just been unwillingly relocated again, but unfortunately he had passed away. Dave deserved human dignity, and yet he did not receive it, and unfortunately his story is not the exception. There are 7,000 houseless individuals just in Hawaii, 500,000 in the United States, and 150 million in the world. It is a harsh reality faced by too many men, women, and children to this day. So, do we confront the problems in front of us in our communities, or do we ask for them to be moved away where it doesn't make us feel uncomfortable because we are not directly impacted? Do we ask questions like, how can the richest country in the world have so many people without a reliable source of food and housing? Or do we look the other way? We must confront the injustices in front of us, and we must do so relentlessly. Gandhi gave his life for such ideals. We have to ask tough questions. We have to challenge the status quo, and we have to challenge it in both small and profound ways. Gandhi asked big questions, and he demanded big changes. He was born into a colonized country, but refused to accept the unjust occupation. So rather than accepting it because that had been the reality for centuries, he challenged the system, and he succeeded. Gandhi had core foundational concepts that should continue to guide how we build a more just world, both in individual action and in the way our government and institutions operate. Ahimsa, nonviolence, what does that mean in 2020? It means avoiding needless wars and occupations of other lands. Satyagraha, nonviolent resistance. It means challenging unjust laws, and there are many, in peaceful ways, wherever they may be, from the local to the global. Swaraj, self-rule. It means giving freedom for people to govern themselves. We must particularly emphasize this in the case of indigenous communities in lands that remain occupied today. And finally, trusteeship, a custodianship of the earth and sharing of resources. In the face of climate change and disregard for the earth, we must hold countries and corporations accountable. We must promote policies that do not decimate the earth. It was through the lens of Gandhi's ideas that India led the way in the progressive language adopted in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights 77 years ago. Gandhi's philosophy reminds us of the universality of human rights and remains ever relevant. Gandhi's ideas should not only be aspirational, they should be the foundation for how we build our institution and society. And yet those principles seem to be being forgotten today. Nationalism is being promoted over unity and cooperation. Instead of focusing on peace and reconciliation, hateful and divisive rhetoric by top leaders are guiding the discourse. And so the legacy of Gandhi is not just one that is historical and to be observed in hindsight. It is one that continues to apply now more than ever. The same ideologies Gandhi fought against and that ultimately killed him remain very real and are increasing in power in India and in the United States. We have the power to use our voices to stand against injustice. Likewise, we can use our silence to protect and promote exclusionary policies of our homeless neighbors, of our Muslim neighbors, of our Dalit neighbors, of our Micronesian neighbors. We must ask, are we going to challenge the unjust policies in front of us, or are we going to reinforce them? It's also a reminder that just because something is legal, it does not mean it's just. Apartheid, slavery, colonialism, separate but equal, those are all legal. Being a law does not make it just, and unjust laws do not require blind loyalty. Angela Davis said you have to act as if it's possible to radically transform the world, and you have to do it all the time. That can feel like a big task in a seemingly unjust world, but we must start with what is right in front of us and realize the power of collective action and do it every day. Gandhi showed us that individual action leads to collective change. From his fast to the salt march, a man stood against the most powerful empire in the world and said, enough. Never doubt the potential power we hold to make change possible. Audre Lorde said, when we speak, we are afraid our words will not be heard or welcome, but when we are silent, we are still afraid, so it's better to speak. Gandhi spoke and Gandhi acted. As long as some individuals continue to be treated like second-class citizens, there is work to be done. As long as there is a justice system that dispenses justice unequally, there is work to be done. We must speak, we must act. Gandhi said, you may never know what results come of your actions, but if you do nothing, there will be no results. We cannot accept to do nothing. The consequences are too dire. The future depends on what we do in the present, and there is work to be done. Mahalo for your time, and may the legacy of Gandhi live on.
Thank you so much, Dr. Malji. Our next presentation is a young Hawaiian singer and songwriter, Gabriel Goes. Introduced to music at a young age, Gabriel started his first band, the Cadets, when he was 13 years old. As a high school graduate of the class of 2020, he now studies music biz and engineering with a full scholarship at Honolulu Community College. His recent band, Backset, has released a single and is now working on their first EP. He's going to share with you a rendition of John Lennon's iconic song, Imagine.
Hello everyone, how's it going? I'll be playing Imagine for you guys. Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. No hell
sky. Imagine all the people living for today. Imagine there's no countries. It isn't hard to do. Nothing to kill or die for. No religion too. Imagine all the people living life in peace. And you may say that I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the world will be as one. Imagine no possessions. I wonder if you can. No need for greed or hunger. A brotherhood of man. Imagine all the people sharing all the world. And you may say that I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the world will live as one. Thank you very much. Aloha.
Mahalo and thank you, Gabriel Goes, for your musical gift. Internationally acclaimed dancer Tara Pandya of California is next on our program. Tara Pandya has gained world renown as a dance performer, teacher, and choreographer, as well as a scholar and a cultural activist dedicated to the promotion of dance forms from Central Asia. She balances her work as a practitioner with theoretical work, conducting dance research throughout the Rockefeller Foundation and the CEC Arts Link. Tara holds an MA in Dance Anthropology from London's Roehampton University and is a 2019-2020 Fulbright Scholar. Today's performance, Satyagraha, Truth and Will, danced and voiced by Tara Catherine Pandya, centers on the theme of nonviolence, resistance, and nuance as a method for resolving conflict. This dance is set to a Chitko poem by activist Ghanshyam Sailani. The Himalayan Chimko movement was created by a collective of Indian women advocating for ecofeminism in resistance to environmental deforestation. Chipko means hug in Hindi, and its leaders practice Satyagraha Gandhian principles of nonviolence. Film credit goes to Neptune Bangdel and music credit to Alam Khan.
ساقی ساقی جان پیاله پر می ششتی بر گل خمار تا کی ساقی ساقی جان پیاله پر می ششتی بر گل خمار تا کی ساقی ساقی جان پیاله پر می ششتی بر گل خمار تا کی چه کردی ای نگار من چه کردی با چشم اشک بار من چه کردی دل خود را به دستت داده بودم با جان بیقرار من چه کردی ساقی ساقی جان پیاله پر می ششتی بر گل خمار تا کی ساقی ساقی جان پیاله پر می ششتی بر گل خمار تا کی ساقی ساقی جان پیاله پر می ششتی بر گل خمار تا کی دلی دارم دلی دیوانه دارم غم بسیار از جانان ندارم برای آن که از غم ها گریزم با دستم تا سحر پیمان ندارم ساقی ساقی جان پیاله پر می ششتی بر گل خمار تا کی ساقی ساقی جان پیاله پر می ششتی بر گل خمار تا کی ساقی ساقی جان پیاله پر می ششتی بر گل خمار تا کی قد ثروت الهی خم نبینم دل شادت الهی غم نبینم ستم هایی که از دستت کشیدم الهی در جهان آدم نبینم ساقی ساقی جان پیاله پر می ششتی بر گل خمار تا کی ساقی ساقی جان پیاله پر می ششتی بر گل خمار تا کی ساقی ساقی جان پیاله پر می ششتی بر گل خمار تا کی
Mahalo, Tara, and mahalo to everyone joining us here today for International Day of Nonviolence and Mahatma Gandhi Day, hosted by Gandhi International Institute for Peace and Still and Moving Center here in Honolulu, Hawaii. Biographies and info on all of our guests today can be found at www.stillandmovingcenter.com under the header Events. As a nonprofit devoted to nonviolence, we gratefully welcome your contributions to the future development of the Gandhi International Institute for Peace programs and activities at www.gandhiandpeace.org/ donate. For every donation over $50, you will receive a GIIP logo mask, and for every donation over $100, receive a book of Gandhi's quotes. Masks and books are also available for purchase at www.stillmovingcenter.com under Boutique E. The Gandhi International Institute for Peace has spearheaded the celebration yearly with the support of Still Moving Center. Renee Tillotson founded the Still Moving Center to share mindful movement arts from around the globe. Her inspiration comes from the joy and moving meditation she experiences in the practice of Mia, and from the lifelong learnings she's gained at the Institute of World Culture in Santa Barbara, California. Both her and her husband Cliff are engaged in an earnest, lifelong spiritual quest and love taking part in conversations that merge philosophical, spiritual, and scientific thought with a lifestyle of compassion. Still Moving Center aspires to serve the community, support the earth and its creatures, and always be filled with laughter and friendship. Please welcome Renee and Cliff Tillotson.
Mahalo and namaste to all. Thank you so much for joining us today for this extremely important and valuable day in honor of Mahatma Gandhi. I want to introduce to you someone who was, as a young man, was profoundly influenced by Mahatma Gandhi. And he eventually turned out to be my husband. His name's Cliff Tillotson. We met at UC Santa Barbara, where we came to study under Professor Raghavan Iyer, who was teaching political science. And he is the one who introduced us to the thoughts and ideals and instantiation of those ideals of Mahatma Gandhi. He is also the author of a seminal work on Gandhi entitled The Moral and Political Thought of Mahatma Gandhi. So as a result of being so inspired by Gandhi's ideas and through this teacher, we went ahead and both got our degrees in political science. Cliff went a little farther and also got his degree in English. He was really so inspired by Gandhi's devotion to the Bhagavad Gita that he wanted to be able to understand the Bhagavad Gita in its own language. And so he undertook the study of Sanskrit with Professor Nandini Iyer. After graduating, Cliff chose the path of the Karma Yogan, the path pointed to in some ways by the Gita and certainly by Mahatma Gandhi. It does not deny the path of devotion, and it certainly does not deny the path of knowledge. However, it came most naturally to his path to follow that of action. And so he became a contractor. He has devoted himself to preserving people's lives, protecting them from rockfall events and other forms of erosion. And he has also done his best to support good causes throughout his entire career. So those would include such things as the Gandhi International Institute for Peace, the Institute of World Culture in Santa Barbara, where he served as a board member, and Still Moving Center itself. Currently, he is one of the founding people behind the Kauhale in Waimanalo that is helping houseless people to rise to their full potential as people in the world who have so much to give. I want to therefore hand over to you, Cliff Tillotson, to speak on Gandhi in regard to a particular story that I think will inspire us to fearlessness.
Well, thank you, Renee. I would just like to start by actually thanking everyone on behalf of the Gandhi International Institute of Peace and the Still and Moving Center for all their very inspiring words in celebration of Gandhi's birthday today, and also in the continuance of his essential and eternal teachings for what Gandhi called Sarvodaya, which is universal welfare and universal uplift. The story I'd like to tell, the retelling, is a short telling of Gandhi's great salt march. So Gandhi, after 20 years in South Africa, came back to India as a hero for what he did for primarily the Indian community in India by uniting them, taking on General Smuts and all the British authorities, and with nothing more than ahimsa to rely on, and was able to get a lot of laws of racism repealed. And so when he came back to India, he came back as a hero, to a hero's welcome. One great inspiring teacher of Gandhi's was Gokhale, and Gokhale met him when he came back to India and said, Gandhi, before you do anything up here, before you make good trouble, you should go and spend a year traveling our country to get to know India, and more importantly, so India will get to know you. So he did that for an entire year, around 1913, 1914. And then after that, he moved to Ahmedabad, where he started his first ashram in India. He decided to go to Ahmedabad because it was a textile industry was very big there. It's in the Gujarat province. And one of his very first campaigns of non-cooperation was for Indians to make their own thread out of cotton with a hand spinning wheel, and to make their own clothing, khadi. And that was a big blow to the British at the time. The ashram he started in Ahmedabad was the Satyagraha ashram. And I would just like to briefly just say something about Satyagraha, because Satyagraha, I think, is one of the three primary pillars of Gandhi's thought and teaching, along with Satya, truth, and Ahimsa, nonviolence. Satyagraha literally means holding on to truth or firmness in truth. Some people translate it as soul force. But for Gandhi, Gandhi's primary truth that he held close to his heart through his whole life, which is also brought up very clearly in Arun Gandhi's book, The Gift of Anger, is the idea, the truth that all of humanity is one family. We are all brothers and sisters. This is the truth that Gandhi would hold on to. The idea of Satyagraha is like, I would put it, it's like ahimsa exponentially. It's like ahimsa on steroids, because what it meant for Gandhi was to go into a field of violence, a field of injustice, and to suffer, to take suffering on oneself, which is a very hard thing to actually visualize. But his Satyagraha disciples would joyously take on this tapas of entering a field where they knew that himsa, violence, was going to be brought down upon them without resisting it at all. In a way, it's like going into a field of karma, a kurukshetra, and transforming it into a dharmakshetra, a field of duty, in the way that he would be purifying that field and awakening the hearts of those who were inflicting the violence and helping to redeem them from that very field of violence. So this idea of Satyagraha was behind his forming of this ashram. After a couple of years, he moved this ashram to the river close outside of Ahmedabad, the Sabarmati River, and renamed the ashram Sabarmati Ashram. This area that he chose was 36 acres of basically desolate, barren land. But Gandhi thought it was the perfect place to create this ashram because on the one side of the ashram, there was a prison. And on the other side of the ashram, there was a crematorium. So when he thought, this is the perfect place for us to train in Satyagraha, because this is one of these two places that is the likely ending up place for someone who is going to be practicing Satyagraha. Also, this barren land was full of snakes, lots of poisonous snakes. So even at one of his prayer meetings on the ashram, to the horror of everybody listening, a cobra came up on the platform where Gandhi was sitting and crawled across his lap while he did not move. He required of everyone there at the ashram, which he referred to lovingly as the inmates, to not do anything to hurt the poisonous snakes in the ashram. So as they continued their non-cooperation with the British government, the people of India became more and more self-confident, they got their dignity and pride back. But at the same time, they saw the oppression they were under by the British government. They saw it more clearly. And Gandhi could tell that anger was starting to build up in the Indian people. And that if he did not find a creative outlet for that anger, it was going to overboil into riots and violence. So he knew he needed to act. Around 1930, Rabindranath Tagore, the great poet, came across India in a train to talk to Gandhi. He says, Gandhi, you must do something. Otherwise, we're going to have terrible violence on our hands. And Gandhi said to Rabindranath that I've been racking my brain day and night, but I cannot figure out what to do. I cannot figure out what to do. But Gandhi had this way, when he didn't know the path forward, what he would do is go within himself and void his mind and his heart and wait in a receptive manner for the still small voice within, which he referred to often as his still small voice, to speak to him. And this is wonderfully portrayed in the Gandhi movie with Ben Kingsley playing Gandhi and Martin Sheen playing the American journalist Walker, when they're sitting on a wall, I think it's the Bay of Bengal. And Walker says, so Gandhi, what are you going to do? What are you going to do now? And Gandhi stayed silent. And then all of a sudden, his face kind of lit up, his eyes lit up, and he got this little wry smile that Gandhi is known for. And Martin Sheen looked at him and says, you know what you're going to do. He had that epiphany. He had that aha moment, that still small voice of truth, which he said God and truth are one. The still small voice of God within or truth within spoke to him. And he says, we must go back to the ashram right now. So they went back to Sabarmati Ashram, and Gandhi wrote a letter to the Viceroy of India, Lord Irwin. And he started the letter by saying, my dear friend, Lord Irwin. And he finished the letter. It's a long letter to your sincere friend, Gandhi. And he's basically said, look, I'm going to take on your salt tax and your salt laws. And you should invite me to come talk so we can negotiate and work this out. Otherwise, I'm going to go through with this campaign, this Satyagraha campaign. And Lord Irwin just blew him off. He told Churchill what was going on. And Churchill says, that half-naked fakir, let him do whatever he wants. I'm not worried about it. So Gandhi decided then to do, on the Bay of Bengal, to do the Salt March, the famous Salt March, which was to walk all the way from Sabarmati Ashram, all the way to the ocean at the village of Dandi, which was 241 miles, and harvest some salt against the laws of the British. On the night before he left the ashram, he told everyone at the ashram and many journalists who had gathered, he said this, "For me, there is no turning back. Whether I am alone or joined by thousands, I would rather die a dog's death and have my bones licked by dogs than I should return to the ashram a broken man." He basically made a vow that he would not come back to the ashram until the salt laws and the salt tax were removed. So the next morning they left with 78 of his satyagrahi inmates, trained in satyagraha and ahimsa, and they began the hike, and they traveled about 12 miles a day. And every time they came to the village, the village leader would renounce his position because his position was based upon the authority of the British. And this happened at every village they went to. Each of the village leaders would renounce their position until they finally got to the ocean. And the next morning they did their purification baths in the water like Malia and her halal do every equinox and solstice. And then Gandhi reached down and picked up just a pinch of salt from the shoreline. But when he did that small action, that great, actually spiritual actions like that, it's like the tip of an iceberg. It's all in the symbology of the act. Because when he did that, the world, all of India heard that he had broken the laws, as well as the whole world. And that meant that everyone could now break the laws. And that's what they did. Throughout India, they started harvesting their own salt, contraband selling of salt, and no one was buying the British salt anymore. And so now Lord Irwin moved into action and arrested 60,000 people and put them in prison, including Mahatma Gandhi. When Gandhi was put in prison, the leadership was handed over to a well-known poetess named Sarojini Naidu. And there's a lot of pictures of Gandhi and her together. She was a great civil rights leader in her own right, as well as a women's rights leader. And she organized 2,500 people from the Indian Congress to go to the Dharasana salt works, about 150 miles north of Mumbai, and go there to pick up salt from the British salt works. Gandhi sent a letter to Lord Irwin telling that they were coming to do this. So they all went, 2,500 satyagrahis, and they were met by 800 Indian policemen who were supervised by 6 British officers. And 25 of these satyagrahis would perform the satyagraha of going joyously and fearlessly up to the salt mines or the salt ponds and get beaten down with these clubs that were encased in metal. And they would do this one row after another. People were getting their skulls broken, their collarbones broken. Then the hospital filled up with these people. But through this action, the respect of the world was against the British. They saw what the British were doing. And it was through this suffering, taking on this tapas, that basically the kingdom or the authority of the British was no longer relevant. So Lord Irwin called Gandhi to Delhi to have some meetings to try and work something out. So there was 8 meetings over 2 weeks between Lord Irwin and Gandhi. And Lord Irwin said during this time that dealing with Gandhi was like grappling with a wrestler whose body had been greased and on whom no purchase could be gained. And so they worked through this thing until they came up with a compromise between them that became the Lord Irwin Gandhi Pact, or the Delhi Pact. And you always know a good compromise when nobody on either side is happy, because Churchill was furious on that side, and Patel and Nehru are also furious in representing the Indian Congress. but they worked out the pact. And on the last day, when Gandhi came to sign the agreement, after they signed it, Lord Irwin called someone to bring in tea. And when he brought in the tea, Gandhi reached into his scarf or his cloak or the cloth that he was wearing and pulled out a little bag and reached in the bag and grabbed a pinch of salt and said, "I've come to enjoy a little spice in my tea." And then he reached over to Lord Irwin with his cup of tea and he says, "Why don't we toast the Boston Tea Party?" And so they had a really good laugh, and they joked about how Churchill would make fun of Gandhi by calling him a half-naked fakir. But as Gandhi left that meeting, he left his shawl behind. And Lord Irwin saw this, and he picked up the shawl and he ran after Gandhi, and he gave Gandhi the shawl and said, "You know, since you're so minimally dressed, we don't want the Prime Minister to make any more fun of you, so you should probably wear the shawl as you leave." And they had another really good laugh. And that is actually the wonderful thing about Gandhi's satyagraha was in the end, it was everyone was part of the same family, and everyone is in the end, even if you're enemies or opponents through it, at the end, you become good friends. So it took another 17 years before India gained its freedom. But with that symbolic pinch of salt, the British imperial rule of India was already over. And with the Irwin Gandhi Pact, from that time on, they worked together on equal footing. So in the long run, it wasn't so much that Gandhi was minimally dressed, but it was Churchill's empire that was shown to have no clothes. So let me just read this wonderful reflection by Nehru about Gandhi, in reminiscence about Gandhi. He said, "We seem to be helpless in the grip of some all-powerful monster. Our limbs were paralyzed, our minds deadened. What could we do? How could we pull India out of this quagmire of poverty and defeatism which sucked her in?" And then Gandhi came. He was like a powerful current of fresh air that made us stretch ourselves and take deep breaths, like a beam of light that pierced that darkness and removed the scales from our eyes, like a whirlwind that upset many things, but most of all, the working of people's minds. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. Tina just texted me. I hope the room is listening to
Mahalo, Renee, and Cliff. At this juncture, the Gandhi International Institute for Peace would like to acknowledge our sponsors, Still and Moving Center, Indian American Friendship Council, Spark Matsunaga Institute for Peace and Conflict, Pacific Justice and Reconciliation Center, the Iolani School, UNA Hawaii, Interfaith, Alliances of Hawaii, Hawaii Health Foundation, Down to Earth, Vegetarian Society of Hawaii, Padam and Madhu Dakad, Open Space Yoga, Center for Attitudinal Healing, Hawaii Forgiveness Project, Maitreya Institute, Global Media Productions, and Hawaii Health Guide. Directing the event today are Nilanthi Vadivel, former Cirque du Soleil performer and artistic director, and current operating manager at Still and Moving. After leading 3 world-renowned Cirque du Soleil productions, she hopes to inspire others to achieve personal and professional growth through ongoing periods of instability and challenging environments. Assisting her today is Emily Rose Carr Hunt, former Cirque du Soleil stage manager, as well as freelance creative director, choreographer, and painter. At Still and Moving Center, she manages social media, provides support to the faculty, and finds great joy in supporting the community. Mahalo to them both. And I'm going to add an extra mahalo because these ladies are great and they are worth their weight in salt, since we just discussed the importance of salt. Our final speaker today, Dr. Kahu Kaleo Patterson, is the longtime president of the Pacific Justice and Reconciliation Center, a nonviolent educator and trainer, a Hawaiian priest in the Episcopal Church, and a professor of peace studies and social work. He has served as a Church World Service delegate to many United Nations General Assemblies, forums, and meetings related to racism, indigenous peoples, and Hawaiian sovereignty. He's been recognized for his work on reconciliation, Hawaiian environmental and social justice, peace, and nonviolence. Today, Dr. Patterson is active in prison and criminal justice reform as the prison chaplain of the Episcopal Churches of Hawaii. His final closing words today will lead directly into the video We Shall Overcome by Nemo Patel and Daniel Nahmad, created in response to these turbulent times. Nemo Patel resides at the Gandhi Ashram in Ahmedabad, India, where he focuses on nurturing the life journeys of underprivileged children. He is a lover of all beings and a world-renowned musician who is invited regularly to share his message of peace and oneness. Whatever the question, love is the answer. My name is Willow Chang, and it has been my true privilege and honor to MC this event today. On behalf of the Gandhi International Institute for Peace and Still Moving Center, mahalo nui loa. Please welcome Dr. Kahu Kaleo Patterson.
Thank you, Willow. Thank you very much. It's good to see you and great job today. I want to begin with a chant that we teach in our Native Hawaiian chapel at the Halava and Waialva correctional facilities. You know, we have a lot of Native Hawaiians in prison, but this chant is very special. Whenever our men come into the chapel, they do this chant. It comes from the Kumu, the creation chant, which is translated by Queen Leo Kalani. And it's a chant about the first Kanaka, the first Hawaiian, and Haloa, which is also the name of the taro, the food that Hawaiians hold very dear. But let me share this chant with you. Kapuka haloa, ku makapea, kano ia haloa, ulu ha haloa, o kalao o haloa, ike ao la puka. Kapuka haloa, ku makapea, kano ia haloa, ulu ha haloa, o kalao o haloa, ike ao la puka. Kapuka haloa, ku makapea, kano ia haloa, ulu ha haloa, o kalao o haloa, ike ao la puka. Now, the translation is as such. The haloa, or the first Kanaka, that grows by the edge of the taro patch became sacred. Plant the haloa. The leaves will grow tall. And so grew the sprout of haloa in the day and thrive. Now, I was thinking that this chant reminds me of how Gandhi too is like haloa, the first haloa. That Gandhi today grows by the edge of the patch that has become sacred. And that today we plant the haloa, we plant Gandhi, his legacy, that the leaves will grow tall. And so as the chant grows, as the chant says, so grew the sprout of the legacy of Gandhi in this day, and thrives. I'm so honored to be here among all of the tall trees of the peaceful forest, where the lambs lay down with the lions, where the sword and spears have been turned into plowshares. Of course, I myself today feel like a broken branch among the giant trees that are here on this virtual meeting. I just want to thank very much our speakers and special guests and the organizers who have worked so hard during this pandemic to pull this off, this virtual birthday, this commemoration of Gandhi and his legacy of nonviolence. If nothing short, this has been nothing short of outstanding. And a big mahalo to Dr. Raj Kumar for his tireless efforts to plant and grow the seeds and trees of Gandhian nonviolence here in these islands of Hawaii and the Pacific all these years. Last year at the towers of Kuhil Park Terrace, the largest public housing project in Hawaii, many years old, built back in the 60s. Dr. Raj Kumar came and joined with a place of 500 Pacific families and celebrated together with us the International Day of Peace on September 21st. And he spoke to the families and the youth about Gandhi and nonviolence. And he marched with us that day to create a zone of peace and nonviolence for that public housing project. This has been the work of Dr. Kumar for the last 15 years, planting and promoting the seeds and trees of nonviolence and the legacy of Gandhi. And now today, this event is a phenomenal effort on his part and others to create a virtual moment, a moment that has crossed seas and continents and crossed borders and boundaries and has gone through maybe even barbed wire fences and steel bars and concrete walls. And this is now what we all must do to spread the power of nonviolence, the legacy of Gandhi. I want to say to all of you today that the global pandemic that we find ourselves in is a new challenge to the hopeful legacy of Gandhi and nonviolence. And that we must more than ever strategize and work together and organize and mobilize as never before to keep this moment of nonviolence vital and dynamic, not just virtual, but on the ground, in the communities, in all of the issues that are proliferating in our communities and throughout the world. I want to thank all of you here today for this new beginning. And as with all new beginnings, we must recenter and refocus and remember hearing the history of Gandhi, so wonderful today. We need to reinvigorate our hopes and not lose heart or lose faith. This is a time of prayer, and most of all, we cannot forget to pray. We must pray and pray together. And I guess that's why I'm at the end. I'm supposed to say a prayer as well. But here's a quote from Gandhi. Gandhi also gave us words about prayer. Hear these words from Gandhi. Gandhi said, prayer, it is a longing of the soul. It is the daily admission of one's weakness. And he said, listen to this. He said, it is better in prayer to have a heart without words than words without a heart. And so we must have heart, but also words with a heart and prayers with heart. And here in Hawaii, Mary Kavena Pukui, one of our kupuna, she wrote and inspires us today. She said the ha, like the ha loa, the long breath. The ha, the breath of life that comes from deep within us, is that which carries our prayers to the heavens. And so we must We must develop. We must make strong the Ha within us so that we can lift the prayers and hopes that we have for a peaceful and nonviolent world high into the heavens so that they can become reality here on earth. Now, in closing, I have a prayer that I'd like to share with you that comes out of the Christian tradition, but I think this prayer is a very Gandhian prayer and captures the deep heart and life of Gandhi. Here is the prayer of Saint Francis, who captures the essence and spirit of Gandhi for us today. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. And where there is sadness, joy. O divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive, and it's in pardoning that we are pardoned, and it's in dying that we are born to eternal life. Amen. Now here's a Hawaiian blessing, and I'll bid my farewell to all of you. But e puli kako, ka ho'opo mai kai ana o ke akua mana loa, ka makua, ke keiki a me ka ohani molele, me o ko a e no hopu me o ko I mauloa aku. Amen. The blessings of God Almighty be with you, be with us all, and remain with us all forever and ever. Amen. Aloha, everybody.
It's burning inside, the hurting and the suffering minds, creating anger, fear, and pain, suffocating our times. The tougher it gets, the rougher social media cries. But we see to it that we tweeting only negative lines. We're sick and tired of history, but repeating it twice. Greed, anger, and violence clearly stealing our nights. Feeling it tight between the shoulders with a chill in the spine. Pinching myself, waking up, trying to stop the rewind and move forward towards stories, overcoming our fears. Choosing love over hate, praying, trading hugs over tears. There's only one choice, breaking down the walls and repair every broken heart on this planet till there's no longer fear.
Walls can't hold us in. Fear can't keep us down. Love will rise again. Yeah, it's rising right now. We shall overcome.
Every time I think it's gonna take much longer,
we shall overcome.
every time I question, am I getting stronger?
We have just begun.
Gonna make a change, we gotta push much farther.
We shall overcome.
We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. Young Gandhi couldn't fathom how to deal with himself when he was thrown off the train and the pain that he felt. Mrs. Parks disrespected, dragged into jail because of the color of his skin, organs, tissues, and cells. One day, a young girl was shot on a bus by a man, a terrorist, part of the Taliban. He said, on this land, you have no right to stand for what you believe in. Girls have no chance here. Well, now, that's just the story of three souls who shook our planet after being down on their knees. And it's not gonna stop. Those seeds have now become trees, and as human beings, we'll keep on digging till we find peace.
Yeah, the cynics always say
that nothing ever changes, that human nature's bound to stay the same. But it couldn't be more plain that violence never pays, injustice never stays, it's bound to fade away. What if history awaits? What if today's the day? We already know the way, so let's all lead the way. We shall overcome.
Every time I think it's gonna take much longer,
We shall overcome.
every time I question, am I getting stronger?
We have just begun.
Gonna make a change, we gotta push much farther.
We shall overcome.
We shall overcome. Come on now.
Carry on.
I will carry on.
Carry on.
I will carry on.
After we're gone,
Long after we're
the roots
gone.
of the tree we plant will be strong.
Yeah, come on. Yep. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe that we shall overcome someday.
Makes me wanna sing now. We shall overcome.
Every time I think it's gonna take much longer,
We shall overcome.
every time I question, am I getting stronger?
We shall overcome.
Make a change, we gotta push much farther.
Someday.
'Cause I'm feeling it deep in my heart.
Deep in my heart,
I do believe.
I do believe.
I do believe.
We shall overcome someday.
Come on, put your hearts together. Here we go. Woo! I knew it. God had a plan for us to do it. To hit rock bottom before we rise and continue. To first learn greed before we learn to be human. To do wrong deeds before we learn to spread beauty. There's always a plan, and now it's time to take a stand for the right of the planet, every woman and man. We ain't gonna stop, only growing our demands for all beings to feel peace in every heart and land. Thank you, Lord, for the strength and the courage to bring us together and keep our souls nourished. These tough times will only drown in our chorus, because we all believe that the truth is before us. We shall overcome this pain. We shall overcome this day. We pray for love to lead the way.